Our next speaker, David Adair, is a nationally and internationally recognized leader and expert in the field of space technology. He has been involved in both, in corporate America. He sees things from the industrial side of things. He has frustrations about what hasn't happened and what has happened, and he has a lot of important information to share with you. So let's welcome David Adair.
Thank you, Terry. You're probably sitting out there going, boy, this is going to be interesting. You got a rocket scientist up here, and he's going to make some kind of speech on technology and stuff, and it might be kind of overhead or glaring. And after sitting through most of the speakers today, I think you might need to lighten up. So anyhow, I'll make it very, I know you've been really bombarded with a lot of information. So with that, I can help you a little bit. All I want you to do is if you just look at this little red light, and it will just take a second, and you'll feel so much better. So, man, I'm telling you. Yeah. See. Well, I could, there went, somebody's back there going, no, I want to remember my mother, So, anyhow, I'm David Adair, and I work in the commercial side of the space program. And this is where we get to make the disclaimer real quick. Do not get me associated with NASA. NASA and I get along about as well as the Arabs and Israelis do. The reason because of that is that we're in the business of commercializing space, and we make products out there that you can utilize in your everyday lives. The type of stuff that I do is called TTC. I'm a technology transfer consultant. Well, gosh, what is that? That's a person that takes the technology that's designed in the space program, then we redesign it and we put it into the commercial sector for applications that have absolutely nothing to do with space. And you're probably sitting there going, well, that's still kind of foggy at best. So let me give you an example of what we do. Let's say right here we have an astronaut that was out in orbit, like John here, John Glenn, in the 60s, and we want to know what they were doing out in space physically, because you got an astronaut out there, the doctors are standing on the ground, they want to know how they perform and function. So we hook these little sensors right here on the astronaut, so we get pulse rate and blood pressure and respiratory function. We get all the vital signs. And then all the data and information is sent back to the ground by telemetry, and everybody looks at it, reading at it. The doctors look at the scopes and say, boy, the astronauts are fine, so we get along just well. However, we walk in and we take a look at that and we go, gosh, you know what we can do for a transfer? So what you have now, you just had a head-on collision out here, and your friends or family or relatives are dying from the impact. The paramedics come sliding up to the crash scene. They got these two little suitcases. They open up the suitcase and they hook the leads to the people. The information is sent back to the hospital from the paramedics, and the doctors look at the information. They look at the scopes, and they're looking at the blood pressure, respiratory function, and all the vital signs. They'll tell the paramedics what to do to stabilize that person and get them to a trauma center, and that's where those suitcases came from. That's technology transfer. And you might think, well, that's pretty neat, but hopefully I'll never need something like that. What else does affect my life? Well, there's a lot of things that we've done, about 17,000 products worth of things. Another example is, in the Apollo days, the astronauts finally got around to eating some solid food in the packages. Prior to Apollo, like Mercury and Gemini, they ate toothpaste. I'm serious. Imagine onion liver flavored toothpaste. Yeah, well, the astronauts had the same reaction. After about, up in Gemini program, you were up there for 14 days. So after a while, you got kind of hostile about this stuff. So they were saying, man, we want a hot meal. And we're standing there going, well, sure, we'll just heat up the food and cook you like the food in the oven, you got something no bigger than a broom closet. So we came up with a package deal where they could eat the food. Now think about that. They're eating the food, and when you fly the moon back in those days, it was 3 days out, 3 days back, a couple days on the moon, 6, 7, so you're looking at 7 or 8 days mission. So after about 3 days of eating solid food, what's going to happen, y'all? something's got to give, you know, and there's no bathrooms. And one other problem, everything floats. It's weightless up there. So they wore diapers. And we had to create a material that could absorb the nasty stuff off of them and still keep them dry, and it could also handle this stuff without floating away. We call Johnson & Johnson, you get disposable diapers. That's where they came from. Okay? All right, now you're starting to get the picture. That's technology transfer. And that's kind of, well, that's pretty much what I do on a daily basis. However, I have a lot more projects which you're going to see. I guess there's several things. I know there's going to be a lot of questions out there. I don't have enough time to answer everything. I can't possibly go through this entire program, this one right here. So I will try to cover as much as I can and give you answers on a lot of stuff. But I think one thing, so bear with me, I'm going to skip through the program to certain areas and related to some of the things that might be of interest to you. So let's back up to one thing. Back in my earlier days, when I was 12 years old. And this is how I got started in the whole process of the space applications arena. I started off building rockets. And I was kind of a weird little kid, I guess, because when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, I was working a new type of mathematics that we were doing propulsion systems with. And I really didn't even know exactly what type of math we had because it was kind of different at that time. And it's what you call today quantum mechanics. So I was working it in 1966. So I was out of this type of mind bearing of myself, I built my first rocket. So I go to launch my first rocket out of the backyard in the rural areas of Ohio, out in the cowfield areas. So I'm at the end of the yard and I launch my first rocket and it leaves at 3,500 miles an hour. It travels 122,000 feet, which is in just short of the ionosphere. And so when this thing roars off, it burns a hole in the ground about the size of this room. I'm standing there watching this thing go. All my 12-year-old buddies are with me. And see, we weren't even allowed to play with matches. They weren't. This thing goes roaring off, and you can hiss so loud you can hear it for miles. So I turn around and look at my friends, and there's nothing but dust there. My mother comes out of the house. She sees this thing just huffing and puffing. It's just burning a streak to the sky. And there's this yard smoldering, and she's looking at me, and I'm standing there, and I'm going. First thing she asked was, "Where's your friends?" I went, "Somewhere in the next county by now." I didn't see them for a week. So that's when I told my mom and said, you know, what is it about me? I'm so weird at times. And she told me something I had to try to think about, and as I got a little older, it made sense, I guess. She told me that, you know, you didn't come from me, you came through me. And I thought, that's an interesting statement for a mother to make. So anyhow, probably I was figuring, you know, in case the police show up, she'd go, I don't know this kid, you know. So anyhow, my parents were pretty lenient with me at that time. So I kept building these rockets. And you might ask yourself, well, how could a 12-year-old kid get hold of materials like that? Well, my dad had retired at that time, and he had a big machine shop. My dad worked for a guy named Lee Petty, who has a son named Richard Petty. I don't know if y'all ever heard of them. But we call Richard King Richard for a real reason. They're the most famous race car drivers in all of history in the national stock car racing. My dad was working with them in 1958 when they raced on the sands of Daytona. So the point is they have a huge machine shop, state-of-the-art. What are the machine shops designed for? Speed, building big engines and high-performance things. So you have all these metal lathes and pressers and all the stuff that I need to do, and I was able to work these things even at a young age. When I was 12 years old, I could overhaul a 426 Chrysler Hemi in 3 hours. So that's a huge engine block. So yeah, but the petty people said, God, don't let anybody know that. That 12-year-old working back there will go to jail for child labor law, you know. So anyhow, that's how I learned to build all the technical end of it. So there was a nice big facility, state-of-the-art. And I don't know if you thought about it, but the fuels we use in the race cars, they're methane, nitro, hydrogen, and we also have liquid oxygen for what we call fuelies, the big drag racers. So there's very little difference between this type of shop and a rocket shop of NASA's. They're just exactly the same exact shops. So now I have all the facilities at hand. So you can see the danger here. I work during the day, do the engines. They go home. Now I'm loose in this place. So I start cranking out stuff, and the rockets start getting bigger and bigger. And why not? It's all laying there, you know. So anyhow, I can tell y'all like this. By the way, let me bring you, you know, I'm from Georgia, so y'all is kind of a phrase we all use. But let me give you proper English here. Y'all is singular, all y'all is plural, okay? So we talk a little different back here in the land of Billy Bob, so it's quite different. So here I'm doing all this kind of rocketry work, and you know, and my friends that you know, they drive their pickup trucks with the gun racks and Dixie plates on the front and a dog named Bo in the front seat. So they're looking at me building all this stuff, and they're going, "Man, what are you doing there?" So well, finally, the rockets started getting really big and real fast, and the last one that I built, the liquid fuel configuration, left at about 6,000 miles an hour. So by the time when Billy Bob and I are standing there going, "Now, son," you know, and the thing's gone. So I finally came up, I kept having some weird dreams, and then that was, and I mean, it got strange. So anyhow, I started building this new type of engine, and this engine is what we call a magnetic fusion containment engine. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. What is a magnetic fusion containment engine? Well, it's not solid propellant, it's not liquid fuel. That's really the primary two engines that we use at the Cape, even today. The magnetic fusion containment engine works on the same principle as the Soviet breeder reactors, like a Tomako reactor. The tutorial compressor, that's where basically what you try to do is you get a hydrogen fusion reaction by colliding two elements together, and it detonates. When it does, you contain the explosion. So let me put it in simple terms. We build this magnetic bottle, and we put a piece of the sun inside. Sure, no problem. Now, see, I give this kind of talk to like over in Denver, Global Sciences, a lot of metaphysical people there, and I'll go, "Oh, yeah, we know about that." And I'm sitting there going, you know, in my world, in 3D or science, you know, that's like, God almighty, you know. And everybody else is just kind of, you're kind of ahead of the rest of the, just bear with me, okay? Because we're up here in 3D world, I'm still with sticks and stones and working with stuff, you know. So, but we're evolving, we're getting there. So anyhow, this fusion containment engine is a really sophisticated engine that did pretty well. However, I needed a few dollars to build this thing. And now here comes the next question. How could a 15-year-old kid get all this kind of money? Well, I was really popular in Ohio in science fairs, about one every science fair imaginable. So I was in newspapers a lot. Well, the local congressman of the area named John Ashbrook of Ohio, some of you might remember him. He ran for president in 1972. But he was a Republican, and he was also at that time chairman in the educational committee in that year when I was building these rockets. So he was trailing in the polls, so he invites me to some political picnics. Well, when I walk over there and ask him, "Yeah, what can I do for you?" You know, he said, "Well, enjoy the picnic." Well, he throws his arm around me and all these camera flashes go off, you know, and I'm standing there and the reporter's going, he goes, "Look what I've done for this child," you know, and I'm sitting there going, what is wrong with this man, you know? So it didn't take me long to figure out I knew what he was doing. With all the popularity I had, I looked like a little prodigy that he helped tutor through the education system, so his percentages went up in the polls real quick. So I just pulled him over about the third time he took me to a picnic, and I said, "Tell you what, Congressman, this is what I need." So I gave him a list about this long, and he looked at it, and I did a pretty good estimate of cost, and it was $1.3 million worth of stuff I needed, and I needed it right then. So I said, "You're going to give me that?" He goes, "No, I'm not." I said, "Oh, yes, you are, because if you don't, I'm going to walk over here and tell the boys from API that you've been dragging me around like a monkey on a chain, and you hadn't done squat for me, and you want to be elected to a dog catcher." So he said, "You're kidding." I said, "No, I'm serious." He goes, "That's blackmail." I went, "I know, I learned it from you." So I said, "I'm on my way. Here I go." You know, and he goes, I said, "You got 7 days. On the end or the beginning of the 8th day, there was an account set up for me. monies were transferred. So we started construction. And it was okay till we got to the point when I requested isotopes from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. That's when the congressman went, this is getting a little deep. So now we have the big machine shop. Now we have funding, and I have the knowledge. You put all that together, and guess what that creates? A rocket. So also had, kind of government help to get necessary resources. So at this point, we were living in Mount Vernon, Ohio at the time, and it's 1970. And we're about to complete the thing, but I still run into some problems. So anyhow, the congressman realized, boy, this is, you can't launch this 10-foot rocket. It weighs 2,000 pounds. This thing, the cows would, that's another story, cows. Cows were around me all the time. See, the farmers had 4 big farms that hooked together and where they all connected in the center corner lot, right dead center of all 4 of them. The 4 farmers went out there and dug a big pit with a backhoe and a dirt ramp down there, and I would launch out of this pit. Okay, so that was my silo launch. Okay, so this is prior to the big one I just told you about, but I thought you might want to know something about the cows. Somebody said, God, tell them about the cows. So anyhow, I would be down these pits building these rockets, and all these cows would come up and look down. So you look up and you got all these heads going, So I'll be sitting there working. I got to where I started calling, I named them, and I could just talk to them. How's it going? And when they see me walk out of there slow, they would all back up and move way on back. If they ever saw me run out of there, they all ran real fast. Cows are not dumb, y'all. So I will tell you, I had many mistakes, and that's the reason I launched out of the pit, because if they detonate, the shrapnel would go into the sides of the dirt walls and wouldn't hurt the cows. So the cows became my friends. So anyhow, about the only friends I had at the time. So anyhow, I was okay until I decided before I build this big one, I wanted to try one other type of technology called cryogenics upper stage, where we have up multiple stages, okay? Well, that's not hard. Yeah, I'll try it sometime. It took NASA 25 years to figure it out, and the Soviets never did. So anyhow, I built one, and I found out why there was such a problem. This rocket come roaring out there, and all the cows had moved back to where they normally would stand. And they all kind of collected over one herd when normally I do these launches, so they all stand there and watch this thing go up. So this 2-stage rocket come out of there, and what happened was the first stage ignites, and it's coming out of the pit, but all within a millionth of a second, the second stage ignites also, kind of like a sympathy pain. So you got a rocket coming out, so when the second motor lit, it blew the first stage back down to the pit, which exploded. The fireball came up and turned the rocket on its side, which just cleared the opening. Okay, now there's this rocket about this tall heading right across about this high off the ground straight for the herd of cattle. And I'm standing there going, oh, God, gee, please, somebody do something, save me. Save the cows. And no sooner I could get that said, this thing is skipping right across the ground right for him. And it noses right in about from here to that wall from all the cows. And with the nose stuck in the ground, the engine wide open, the vibration is a little severe. Ruptures the fuel tank, this thing explodes, and it blows a fireball about the size of a small house. So all the cows are standing there, and they see this big fireball, and I can see their faces, their eyes like this. So all the cows doing about face in one big herd, and it's a massive stampede, except for one cow. That's on the far side of the herd that didn't see anything. And she's looking out in the other direction, and this cow just disappears under the stampede. So I run over to that cow, and this cow is dead. I mean, it's all busted up, And I'm sitting there going, oh, God, I've killed this cow, Farmers come up real quick because they heard all the commotion, the fireball, and they said, are you all right? And I said, yeah. And they're looking at that cow, and they go, that cow don't look too good, So they went back, got the front end loader, come back, pick up the cow, and we went back to the farm. And I'm really worried because I thought, God, all the farmers going to throw me off the land. I won't have my neat launch facility. Daggone, this is a bad day. So they throw a chain around the cow, and they hoist it up on this big tree limb. And They said, David, normally we take cows to the down to the slaughterhouse and they take care of stuff, but see, we don't have time for that. But there's not time because we got to get all the blood out of it and everything. So anyway, we want you to dress this cow. And I'm sitting there going, why would I want to put a dress on this cow? So farmers back here with tobacco plugs almost swallowed it, trying not to laugh. So about that time, I'm looking at this poor cow hanging up there, and I hear behind me this, and they give me this chainsaw. Well, I turned about every color of the rainbow through the 4-hour process, and I ended up dressing this cow out into steaks and everything. But anyhow, we ended up with a third cow for free because they had such a great time watching this, and I still got to keep my lunch facility. So there's the cow story, and not very many people get that story because I really don't take time to tell that thing for obvious reasons. Anyhow, back to when the Oak Ridge, Tennessee thing came up, that's when this interesting guy got assigned to me there. This man's parents lived in the town we lived in Mount Vernon, Ohio in 1967, and you can check out his biography book, and this is all in the back of it. I've got a paper trail as big as this room. It's easy to track all this stuff. So anyway, this man's name, he was retired at the time. His name is Curtis LeMay. Ever heard of him? 4-star general, Air Force general named Curtis LeMay, former Joint Chief of Staff fellow, a little bit kind of important guy at that time. But he was retired and he hated retirement. So since he was there visiting his parents all the time, and just so happens my mother was an LPN and she was their caregiver. So he knew about me, and then the congressman got involved and he became my project manager. So he introduced me to a place called Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. That's where we take the rocket, and we go down there and they look at that thing and go, holy smokes, they're expecting something like this, right? There's an 18-wheel semi with this thing on the back of it. So they said, we can't launch this thing here. I said, well, I know that. So sometimes the Air Force states the obvious, you know. So they put us on a C-141 Starlifter, and we went to White Sands, New Mexico. So now me and my rocket, and the year is June 1971, and we prepped this thing for launching. And so I just, they get it out on a pad about 12 miles from us, and I was just thinking to myself, 12 miles. Well, if the fail-safe systems should not work and this thing has a malfunction, we will get, for about a millisecond, to see the sun on the surface of the Earth. And then about 2/3 of New Mexico will look like the surface of the moon, because it will be a fusion detonation. So I had no way of testing this engine, y'all. So I'm sitting there going, I hope this thing works. So, and the colonel that was with me, he didn't catch the humor of it. He asked me, what if this engine should malfunction? Any radiation problem? I said, yeah, but you won't have to worry about it. And I also told him, I said, if it goes wrong, do what I do. See that big wall behind us? Go like this, and it makes the neatest shadows as you vaporize. He didn't catch the humor in that. So anyway, the rocket was launched, and it took off, and it did a tremendous launching. And I'll try to make this brief because I've got a lot of stuff to go into. But anyway, the rocket takes off, and when it does, it's not a normal launch, y'all, because it's not a normal engine. They're expecting to see, flames come out, and there goes the rocket. How nice, right? Well, it's not going to work that way. See what happens? The flames pour out of these things, and when that field opens up on that plasma drive manifold, what will happen is we'll put an orifice out there in this force field, and what will happen is that little orifice, what we call SI, specific impulse, which is the heart and soul of a rocket engine. So when the fire comes out of there, when that little orifice opens up, at that moment, the fire will go from red to kind of a bluish, and then it goes to a white color, and then it'll snap like a welder's arc. You ever seen a welder's arc? You can't see it. It's so bright. What happens is that when the flames come pouring out, there was this snap, and then there was this white arc, or just like a welder's arc. What that was, the surface of the Earth is now looking up in the rocket engine to the face of the sun. The power of the sun is there. Have you ever seen a bullet leave a rifle barrel? That's what the rocket looked like. You never saw it. It was gone. However, it left a few things behind as it left. Actually, it didn't leave it behind. It took it with it. There were such speeds involved, it rips a hole. It's like a white tornado all the way into the sky. And this first concussion ring comes out from the explosion. You can see it coming across the desert. And they see it coming to the Air Force, and they hit this button, and these alarms go off. People hanging on stuff out there. The concussion comes by, and they look like flags in the wind. So they go, what is that? And there's a white tornado-type thing, and what it's done, it has left so fast, it has ripped a hole in the atmosphere all the way to space. So what you have is a vacuum of space now looking at the launch pad through this tube. So guess what it does? Like soda through a straw. You know, there goes the launch tower, there goes the pad, equipment, all going up in there, and I'm going, wow, I didn't expect that. So in nature, Mother Nature hoards a vacuum. So what will happen, the planet will just slam the atmosphere shut, and it starts at the least point of resistance at the top and comes down. So it's like you squeezing toothpaste out of a tube, right? Well, anyhow, atmosphere slams shut, so here comes back the pad and launch tower. Hits with such a kinetic energy force that there's a second detonation shock ring. No sooner people, I'm looking out the window, no sooner people going like this, they look out and they go, God, you know, they hang on. Second shock wave. So by this time the colonel's going, is this normal? I'm going, I don't know. I haven't never done this before. So anyhow, I was told to program this thing to land 656 miles northwest of where we were, which I thought was a little odd because back on trajectories, I could drop that thing right back on your little head. So we wouldn't have to walk very far. But they said they were real tough about that. I said, sure, fine, whatever. So we drop it, and it lands, and they said it's coming right down where they want it. Okay. So NORAD was tracking it, and, well, that was another thing. See, when that thing was gone and nobody saw a rocket leave, they thought it blew up. Well, this red phone rings over here. So they walk over and pick up the phone. You hear this man going, what's going on? You know, and you hear him on the red phone. He goes, there is something at Mach 8 and still accelerating, heading to the ionosphere. That's 8,654 miles an hour, but it did it in 4.2 seconds. So I built the fastest rocket on Earth at that time, and you can check with the Air Force. I won the most outstanding in the field of engineering sciences at the age of 17 from the United States Air Force. So anyhow, that was all kind of neat. But the guy on the red phone going, man, do you know it's coming right down where it's supposed to? Do you guys know what's going? They go, yeah. Okay. So they tell me we're going to go to the recovery area. All right, that's going to take us. There was a black jet that flew into White Sands. It was a DC-9, and the only black DC-9 I knew at that time that flew around had a white bunny head painted on the tail. Belonged to Hugh Hefner, Playboy. But this was not Hugh Hefner. This was DOD. So these guys in these neat suits with these mirror sunglasses said, let's get on the jet. So we get on the jet, and I pointed out something to them and said, you know, that thing has come down 656 miles northwest. It's in an area 120 miles north of Las Vegas. It's called Groom Lake. It's a dry lake bed. And I said, how are you going to land this jet? You boys notice this thing's got rubber tires. It's going to it's going to moor up to its belly out there. I said, don't worry about it, kid. So we get on the jet. An hour and 45 minutes later, when I get there, you know, they were right. You know, there's dual 10,000-foot runways there. And there's a 42,000-acre Air Force base there that's not on my little map. So this is a place what you all today call Area 51. But the date is June 20th, 1971. So we land. And there's my rocket south at the end of the runway, trash dump area. I thought that was a good place for it. So anyway, it parachutes with belly in the wind, and it looked just fine. So I start to walk toward the rocket. Well, don't make it. These big Air Force guys, these funny-looking little beret hats, look like Pierre, wherever Pierre is at. So they throw me in this golf cart, and we go for a ride. There are three big, weird-looking, low-built hangars, but they're extremely large and deep. We go in the middle one, and I'm sitting in this golf cart and going, this is neat, you know. You guys want to show me a hangar? That's nice. I like this hangar, you know. Well, anyway, lights started spinning inside, you know, little warning lights, and these rails come up out of the floor around the doorways, And this thing inside is big, y'all. It's about 4 football fields. Big. The whole thing drops out from under it. It's an elevator. So we go down about 20 stories, and the thing I noticed most interesting about it is worm screws. You know what those are? Worm screws is the thing that turns your lipstick in your lipstick. You turn that thing, the lipstick comes out. If you take it apart, you'll find a little thing that looks like a screw in there, and that's how you make things go up and down. It's called a worm screw. That's what makes your lipstick work. However, this is a little bit bigger than the lipstick case. These worm screws, about the size of the quarter of this room over here, each of them. About 12 of them running up and down the walls, and it's the best thing we know of to lift extremely heavy loads, because it's better than any chains, cables, wires could ever achieve. So these things are going down, these big worm screws, and we get down and the floor levels out, and now we're down at this big, huge hangar type thing underground. I'm going, wow, this is neat. You know, I thought I knew some stuff about the Air Force then. You know, I was real buff on that, and I don't recall them having an underground hangar anywhere. So anyhow, it's a big arc type roof. It's all concreted in place. It has a corrugated type surfaces. And all the workshops and offices and buildings are built flush in the walls, so they leave the big center bays open. So we drive down through this thing, and there were some neat planes in there. There was some of the experimental planes I recognized. There was, at that time, it was 1971, and I remember they just had a thing called an SR-71, a Blackbird. So there was a Blackbird sitting there. And there was a couple other aircraft even today I didn't recognize. They looked like a teardrop. I have no idea what those things were. So anyhow, we ride in the golf carts. We're going down until we get to a big work bay area, and there's big side doors, and they open the doors, and we go in this work bay area. And there's a neat-looking thing sitting in there, and it's big. It's about the size of a school bus, and it's under these covers, and they pull these covers back, and I'm going, holy smoke, it's an electromagnetic fusion containment engine. Now, mine is about the size of a football. This thing's about the size of a school bus. And I was kind of disappointed. I thought I was kind of ahead of everybody. And I'm going, holy smoke. Now, Apollo 14 was about to leave the Cape at that time. So what are we using as the Cape? Liquid fuel rocket engines. So I asked them, if you guys got this, you know, why are we using liquid fuel rocket engines? These fusion containment engines are much better. And they're going, well, we're just working on this engine, son, and that's why we brought you down here. We need some help with this thing. Since you seem to have a small one that's built just like it, and it just landed up here, and it works really well, this one's all busted up, and we'd like for you to tell us some things about it. And I'm going, well, if it's your engine, you know, why am I telling you about it? And they go, well, see, we have people working on it, but they're not here right now. And I'm going, I went, you know, are they on vacation? They go, yeah. Oh, I'm 17-year-old, you know, so, and then he said, yeah, and since you seem to be really good at this type of technology, we'd like for you to give us a hand with it. You'd like to help your country, wouldn't you, son? I said, yes, sir, you know. I listen to Nita Bryant, you know. So I said, I need to crawl up on this thing and get a good look at it. And so I walked over toward the engine. I was saying to myself, these are no good lying, no good to you, because I knew that there's something wrong about this story. So we get near the engine. The way the room was lit was really interesting. You ever seen a paint booth when you paint a car? You ever looked at the lights? The lights are built in a rainbow fashion the whole length of the area. That's so you don't have any shadows. Because if you're spraying, you get a run, you got a shadow, you might not see it, and you mess up your whole car in a paint job. This entire room is lit the same way. There's no shadows anywhere. You hold out your hand right now, you'll see shadows. The reason they do that, that's a great idea for a lab, because that way you can work on something without, you know, moving lights around to see what you're working on. So that caught my eye. I thought, wow, this is a really neat room the way they have it lit. So when I get near the engine and I get ready to, you know, get on the engine, as I put my hands right next to the engine, there's shadows. And I'm going, there's no shadow on the floor, there's a shadow on this engine. How is that working? I thought, wow. So I didn't think much about it until I put my hands on the engine. Now, some of the alloys in this engine was really interesting. There were some areas in the outer panels that are almost translucent. And when you touch them, you can see all this neat little waves coming off your skin and moving through the alloy. And I pull it off and it stops. I put it back on and I'm going, wow, that's neat. Heat recognition alloy. You know, I knew that we might get that one day, but I didn't think it worked that good, you know. So anyhow, I'll crawl up on this thing, I'll take a look at it, and what has happened as I get on top of it and walk toward the center, there's a big hole there. And what has happened, this thing has suffered a core breach. Now, the core breach in these engines is a little bit of a severe situation. The internal combustion heat of the engines, of these type engines, run around 100 million degrees centigrade. You could toast your marshmallow there, y'all. So anyway, when the field dropped and this blast center was, all the alloys exposed to this heat, it vaporized, so it's blowing out in a 360-degree pattern. But there's a fail-safe system the way we have it built, because when these things converge, the manifold was shut down in a nanosecond, billionths of a second, so the blast stopped. So it just burned out about a four-foot diameter section and stopped. So I thought, wow, the fail-safe systems work. So anyway, you know, by the time I looked at all this thing, and there was another thing interesting about it. You know what that would be? No wiring. Now, why would that be interesting? My engine had about 2 miles of wiring on it to get all the necessary data and stuff flowed to the twin particle accelerators. If you ever seen old pictures of Fat Boy, the atomic bomb, you remember the thousands of wires hanging on that thing? If you owned a soccer ball in 1945, he would have been locked up and buried under a federal prison forever. You know why? A soccer ball would have been top secret. Because the soccer ball is designed a Fat Boy. The way the geometric patterns are shaped, that's where you put all these wires, which fires these explosives in a 360-degree pattern, crashing everything into each other to split an atom. Okay? So, this thing had no wires. And I'm going, wow, this thing's got no circuitry. How is this thing working? So there's these thousands of tubes running all over the engine, cascading, and there's a big stem running through the center with all these others raining out over it. And I went, I've seen this pattern before. And I went, I know what it is. It's like a brain stem. It's like a brain stem with all this cascading piping all over this engine. That's the circuitry. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they didn't figure it out at the time. But anyway, while I was looking at it, I thought, boy, this is a fascinating, interesting design. Well, it was about that time when I just had to turn around, and they're standing down there, and I'm looking at them. I'm going, you know something, y'all? This thing ain't from around here, is it, boys? And I said, and let's do some assumptions. This is an engine. It came out of a craft. Where's the craft? And if it's got a craft, it's probably a crew. God knows what you got to do with them boys. Well, they got real hostile about that. They don't like questions like that. And I said, furthermore, I'm not going to help you anymore because you guys lying. This thing is something else. And we're not even on a technology base at this level. This is 1971. Well, the two guys that carry me around a lot, my escorts, they're climbing up, and they don't look friendly. So I said, all right, I'll get down. So I am really ticked off. So I get down, and when I do, I put my hands back on the engine, and then some of the panels, instead of a nice little swirling effect, they now look like tornadoes radiating out through the metal. And I go like that, and go like that, and I went. So I get off the engine, now we're riding back up to the surface, and I started thinking about that, and I just realized what that was about. That thing is a symbiotic engine. Do you understand what a symbiotic engine is? For those who don't, let me enlighten you. A symbiotic engine is an engine that can merge with a different type of external force or entity. What the pilots would do in a craft like that, when they sit down in it, they strap on a hat or whatever they do with a suit, bolt into the seat, and the pilot and the engines merge together in a symbiotic relationship. You remember all the tubing going down across the engine? It's like a brainwave pattern. The mind of the pilot becomes the firing order of that engine. Now, you might sit there and go, he's crazy. Yeah, that's just BS. Oh, yeah? Well, let me enlighten you to a current event. Right now in Princeton, in New Jersey, Princeton University, there is a lab that Dr. John runs, and McDonnell Douglas, you ever heard of them? Not a little slop outfit. They are funding a project where they are building a symbiotic system for firing controls on the F-22 fighter. You didn't know about that, huh? Oh, well, let me tell you more. They're doing an opposite system. What do you mean by that? It means that they're trying to shield the pilot's thinking away from the firing controls of the jet. Now, why would they want to do that? No, not remote control. The pilot went home last night, opened the door, finds his wife in bed with a basketball team, couple of dogs, whatever else, you know. The point is, the pilot's having a bad day. He gets up next morning, he's got to go fly this fighter. So he straps into the F-22, and he goes into a flight. He encounters, engaged with an enemy craft. They get into a radar lock contest. And now he's having a bad day from what he's thinking about. And the sensitivity of the firing controls of these systems are so sensitive, they can pick up his frustration. And they hesitate. At 1,600 miles an hour in a dogfight with SAM-locking missiles, one hesitation, just that, will determine whether you live or die. So the enemy locks on him and they kill him with a missile. So they're building a system that will screen his thought patterns away from that fire and control system. Where do you think they got that idea from? Duh, 1971, they had a whole nifty system. So I knew right then that this thing was something from somewhere else. So anyhow, a lot of things happen in this story, and we don't have time for it, but I got out of there thanks to Curtis LeMay, and if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have made it. Well, Curtis came over there because, it's a long story, but I blew my own engine up when I got to it. They took me upstairs. I asked to see my engine. I knew what was going on. They wanted first strike capability. What's going on in June 1971? We just bombed the dickens out of Cambodia. Why? They're not even at war with us. We're locked in North and South Vietnam War. And the Soviets are stockpiling into Cambodia, feeding the North supply, and Westmoreland, General Westmoreland, getting his butt kicked daily on the battlefield. So Westmoreland has requested for small trash can-sized nuclear, what we call strategic nuclear strike, which is what we call surgical nuclear strike, small little nuclear warheads. And Soviets said, you do that, and we will launch global-wide thermal nuclear war. And let me tell you, at that time, the Soviets were not kidding. Well, the guys on our side aren't any lighter in thinking. They're just as serious. So the reason we don't annihilate each other at that time was we live under MAD, perfect name, M-A-D. You ever heard of it? Mutual Assured Destruction. All right? How do you win MAD? First strike. The first strike is whoever gets there first wins. So guess what they wanted? My rocket engine. Put nuclear warheads on it, put it on our subs, park it off Siberia. The Soviets would not even see the blip on the radar screen. All they see is a white flash, and that's the end of it. We win. And when you do, you win the world. Whoever wins MAD controls the planet. So they're ready to go for first strike. And I couldn't let them do that. So I did my rocket in. So how could you blow up a rocket when you're just a 17-year-old kid on a top-secret military base? You start crying. Simplicity gets them all, buddy. I start crying. I want to see my rocket. You guys are going to take it away from me? I'll never get to see it. At least want to see it recovered from the flight. So they said, God, put him on a golf cart and go out there and look at a rocket. So we went out there. But as we went, I bent down to the big hangar doors and the wheels, and these wheels have this black stuff on them called graphite grease. So I just scooped my hand across it real quick, and they throw me in there, and I got some on my palm. So we ride way out there to the rocket, and I said, let me take a closer look at it. So the two guards stand there. So I open up the inspection doors, and I open up the cyclotron particle accelerator chamber and smear the grease inside, and then close the doors. I turn on the accelerators. Ask any physicist what happens when deuterium meets graphite grease. Extremely violent interaction. So in 60 seconds, the particle accelerators are going to cycle up and fire their charge into that grease. So I close the door and I go, hey, this thing's got a leak. We got to run for it. So we get on the golf cart, and the sergeant's going, what's going on? I said, I don't know, drive, So we are going, and this thing, and they drive, we're about a quarter mile away, and he goes, is that far enough? I said, I don't think so. So these guards are just going, and we just hitting high spots, man. And I'm going, I hope this thing gets out far enough. So anyway, it detonates, and it blows a hole about the size of a football field, and Pifflin is gone forever. So that's my engine. So I can't. I didn't have time to finish the research on that thing, y'all, but let me tell you, what I just got rid of in 1971 was amazing because, see, this engine's really built for space, deep space launching. See, it's a very simple principle that works in physics. For every action, there's an opposite equal reaction. Well, the matter coming out of the nozzle is moving at 186,756.54 miles per second. You ever heard of that? Speed of light. If that's true, then the ship will eventually overtake and equal the speed of the exiting matter. So guess what this engine's capable of? Light speed. And we had it in 71, and I had to blow it in a million pieces. Bad day. So anyway, they didn't like that too much. So now the engine's blown up, and the one downstairs is busted, and all they got left is this kid. So if they throw me in this room with no windows, I sit on a concrete floor, and they told me I will be there for the rest of my natural life. And they're not kidding. And now I really start crying because my parents think I'm in White Sands, New Mexico. Well, anyway, there's this big commotion. I was there about 8 hours, 10 hours, something like that. And door opens up, and there's this silhouette standing in the doorway, and he's cussing to no end, and there's this stogie going like this. That man, if you know anything about him, is called Curtis LeMay. He showed up from Wright-Patterson. If you didn't know the way things are structured at that time, Curtis LeMay was involved with Wright-Patterson since he was a former SAC commander. SAC at that time was in charge of what you call Groom Lake Area 51. So he just showed up and he took me home. So anyway, he gets me home and he told me the best thing I could do is never build another rocket engine for the rest of my life, and that's the best he could do for me. And he'll try to take care of most of the paper trail, but he's not going to get it all, and he didn't. So anyhow, they take me home, and he takes me all the way back to my house in Mount Vernon, Ohio, and there's my parents. And that's how I ended my summer vacation of my junior year in high school. So I start school in the fall, and first thing teacher asks is, write about your summer vacation. I told him I worked at Pizza Hut. So anyway, everything was quiet through the winter and the spring, and I was graduating, and now I'm going to go to Ohio State University to astrophysics, and I'm all ready to go, and I'm shaking hands, and I'm talking to the parents. Yes, I know, great, can't wait to get there. And, you know, oh yes, I'll say hi to Woody Hayes when I get there. So anyhow, turn around, got hold of his hand, and it's the DOD agent from Groom Lake smiling. And he slapped this paper in my hand. I open it up, and it says, greetings. It's June 10th, 1972. The draft didn't shut down until 1975. I am pulled out of the line, taken to a car, parents screaming back there, and 3.5 hours later, I come out of Fort Columbus, and I end up in a place called Langley, Virginia, home of CIA. So, first taste sodium pentothal, great party stuff. So anyway, after about 4 days of partying with these boys, they didn't get what they wanted, and so they were going to send me to the Fort Bragg. I go to the DMZ in Vietnam, come back, and they said, you know, you won't be there long. That's the good news. Bad news might be in a box. Good news, we'll put a flag on it. So end of problem. So I'm not going to give them what they want. So before I left, they asked, what do you feel about jet engines? I said, well, they can be defensive. I can work on those. Okay, you go in the Navy. All right, so I'm in the Navy. 14 weeks later, after Great Lakes, I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm standing there, and I'm now working on a thing called the F-14 Tomcat. So when I'm 19 years old, I helped build the power plant of the F-14. And I'm in the Navy for the next 10 years. After I get out, open on a private aerospace consulting firm, and here I am today. And that's pretty much that whole story. And I would have gladly left that buried, and I would have taken it to the grave with me, and I would have been happy not to tell a soul about any of this, because, see, think of the problem. Sure, yeah, I saw an alien engine, you know, in a top-secret Air Force base called Area 51. Yeah, and I built an engine similar to it. Yeah, so much for a 3D career. Gone, right? I'm not going to tell you squat about it. So I was quiet for 27 and a half years. And then this guy comes up one day, and he tells me, call this man. He said, there's a lot of people like you that seen these things. I said, yeah. Okay, so you heard the story by a friend of mine. So I call this guy, his name is Dr. Steve Greer. You ever heard of him? Well, I talked to Steve Greer, and Steve started talking to me. I told him the story, and he said, "You want to test? You got to testify to Congress about this." I said, "I'm not sure about this, Steve." You know, I said, he said, "No, you got to testify." So for 2 months he called me, and then 4 days before the thing for the testifying, I said, "I'll do it." And he sent me a plane ticket, and on April 9th, Wednesday of this year, I testified to a closed session of Congress in Washington, D.C. at the Sheraton Hotel. Now, now, we had some interesting times there in this hearing. First of all, Steve had us all set up, and we would get to where we could talk to the joint session. Sure enough, there was an awful lot of people there. And the deal was when we testified, we got into the particulars and the details of what we were talking about. And Steve was really had things pretty well organized. And so as we got into the hearing process, there was 13 of us, I think 12 or 13, and everybody that was there had seen, you know, blips on radars and chasing them, and they had radar contact locked with a pursuit aircraft, and there was a lot of sightings and stuff. And I know to a lot of people that may sound disappointing. You know, that don't sound very exciting. Well, I got news for you. In the 3D world, we get pretty damn excited about, you know, UFOs locked on radar. That's a contact. So this was pretty significant because you got to understand a lot of these people in Congress hadn't heard about this stuff. Now, some of the old guys have. I guarantee you they have. But for a lot of them, that was new. The only problem I was having, though, I was the only one that was hardware contact at the time. And Steve has about 120-some witnesses that not only seen stuff I've seen, but way beyond things I ever saw. I just really saw an engine, that's all I saw. I've never seen a UFO in my entire life. Never seen an alien, no autopsies, okay, or any of that stuff. I'm not a UFO researcher, never have been, never will be, okay, like 7-Up, you know, never have, never will. So don't think I'm out here to do UFO research. I'm not. I'm a space transfer consultant, and that's where I'm at. That's what I do for a living. However, I didn't work at Area 51. I had a one-day experience, all right? So don't come up and tell me, you know, he's worked there for 25 years, right? Wrong answer. So it's just one thing. I would have left it alone, and I would have been happy to do so. However, when I show up and I'm the only person there that's got the hardware contact, suddenly I know what a turkey feels like on Thanksgiving. So I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. So we got him testifying. I'm thinking about, man, how am I going to tell these people this? So I'm sitting there going, I sure hope I need something more tangible, you know, other than just sightings and stuff. I need somebody to at least give me something that could corroborate my story a little bit better. So I was expecting, 120 hardware witnesses, and what I saw would have been puny compared to what they said they'd seen. So right before I got to testify, there's a guy that got in front of me. He's an attorney from Asheville, and he said in 1961, he was 18 years old. He was put in the basement of the Pentagon. He was an encryption officer, where they do secret coding, decoding. So one day his supervisor walked in. They laid down 3 pieces of metal. One of them is about a foot long, and the foot-long piece has all these really strange-looking hieroglyphic type things written on it. And I'll hear that, and I go, oh, yeah. So I didn't tell you something about that big engine. It's covered with all these weird-looking markings, all right? I was born in photographic memory. I've memorized this entire engine from end to end. So when I hear that, I start writing the stuff down. I'll reach up and I hand him the paper and go, hey, Steve, does it look like anything like those? And he remembered what 12 of the emblems looked like, and I hit all 12. Now, this guy's an attorney. He's under oath. Now, you got to remember, we're all under oath. 20 years federal prison for perjury. Now, how many people in here are willing to take this risk? And they will do a paper check run on you, guarantee it. And they'll assign a little committee just to follow you. Well, as any good attorney under oath would do, he looked at that and he goes, I swear I never met this man before in my life. And I went, good, that's exactly what I want. because it's true. So when I get up and I go, well, guys, how did I hit all these emblems on that piece of metal? It's simple. That piece of metal came off the engine. I was standing on top of it, and I was in the bottom of the Area 51 that you said don't exist. And that's how, so anyhow, everybody's going, so, you know, how could I do that? The mathematical odds are ridiculous. So now they had a real problem to struggle with. And about 75% of the people in that room are attorneys. No attorney under oath is going to risk losing his bar license in the 30-year practice. Now, is he? So they're going to have to believe him. If they believe him, they just saw what I did. Now they got to believe me, but they can't believe me because it's too much to believe. So they got a problem. However, they handled it pretty well, and then next day we're supposed to talk to the press. Well, everybody talks to the press except Steve kind of gets me off the side, and I never get to talk to the international press about this. So I'm kind of sequestered. All right, that set off a whole hoopla of stuff, which you probably heard in the grapevines out there. And what happened was I wrote Steve, it annoyed me a little bit that I didn't get to talk to the press, and I thought, hey, it's probably just as well if I go home. But I started thinking about it, you know, I thought, gee, I want to ask him how come I didn't get to talk. So, because he never did talk to me or even answer my, you know, we never got a chance to talk. So I make 2 phone calls on his answer machine, write him a letter, and never hear from him. And that kind of annoyed me a little bit. So when I get to San Diego at a whole life thing, I just do some real negative talking here on Steve Greer. And only because it's more reactionary, okay? And I'm kind of assumptions on my part, but I'm a little bit upset about it. So one guy jumps up out of the audience. His name is Les Morgenstern. Anybody ever heard of him? Well, anyway, Les Morgenstern is a pretty good friend of Steve Greer. So he comes up at me afterwards. He's really upset. He said, you shouldn't be so negative with Steve Greer. I said, well, what would you do? I've left 2 messages on the machine. I wrote him a letter, and he's never answered me. So I suggest that if you know him, give him a call me quickly. So, but I said, you know what, Les, you're right. I won't say another negative thing. So when I get home 2 days later, Steve Greer calls. So I talked to Steve, and Steve was been out of the country, which he travels an awful lot and does a lot of international traveling, so I didn't have a problem with that. And I asked him about the letters and the 1 letter and 2 phone calls, and he said he didn't get them. And I believe that by the way I could listen to him. And believe me, I get boxes of mail, and I could lose mine in the shuffle, so I'm sure he is really swamped. So I said, well, let's get right on into Steve. I said, how come I didn't get to talk? And it was his strategy. He didn't tell me, so he told me his strategy, and I'm listening to it. I said, you know, that makes perfect sense. You should have told me that in the beginning. So that was an error on his part. The error on my part was I kind of got a little upset about it. So I said, we need to talk about this. So I said, you want me to say nothing. I can't do that. I said, I've done stepped out on a limb. People ask me questions. And I can't do it for 2 reasons. One is, if I don't say anything, it's going to make you look bad as a covert person, and it's going to perpetuate a, you know, even further gap in trust here. And the second thing, we really need to disclose this because that's what the whole thing was about to begin with, was it not? So we worked out a deal. We had to hammer out things. I could talk about a lot of this. There's certain key points he didn't want me to say, and I agree with him on it. And that's pretty much how he left it. And he has another hearing coming up, and I'll be involved in that. What's the point of all of this? The point is this. I really hardly know Steve Greer. So I called up Les Morgenstern, and I said, Les got on the phone. I said, I'd like to thank you, Les. You're absolutely right. I should not have got upset and started saying negative things because I hadn't got hold of the original source, and we didn't hammer things out. And you were totally right, and I appreciate you pointing my error out. Well, it's quiet on the phone. Les comes back and goes, oh, my God, a scholar and a gentleman. I didn't think there's anybody left on the planet like that. And I went, what? Because I said I was wrong, okay? So he said, boy, that's pretty neat. And I said, well, I appreciate your help. So that's the point I'm trying to get across to you here. As a scientific observer of a situation, why is it in the UFO community you have such infighting and backstabbing among yourselves? I don't even know Steve Greer that well. I do know he's a doctor. He's an ER doctor. And, but I do have 14 medical doctors in my family. So I know what I'm dealing with, okay? There's an ego problem there a little bit, only because they do remarkable things. They literally bring the dead back to life in an ER room. So you have to learn to appreciate that about them. So people say that Steve Greer's really egotistical. No, he's not. He's very highly educated. He's very capable, and that's just a natural thing that occurs with him, so I agree. But the point is this. I hardly know about him. Here's the guy that's in space sciences. There's a medical doctor, and we had a real touchy ego with everything from clashing egos or whatever. We talked it out. We worked through it. We came to a compromise, and now we're back on track, and everything's fine. If two people hardly know each other can do that, what is your problem that you attacked your own friends and you're at each other's throats out there because the data don't match? So I would suggest to you that you shouldn't do that, and it needs to stop for a very good reason. If you want to break through that federal wall over there and you shine a flashlight on it, that's the way y'all are now. If you're splintered among yourself. When you become cohesive, you become a laser beam, you'll burn a hole right through it. And that's what you need to do. So, people go, you get such a paranoia going here, oh, it's covert, the CIA. The CIA don't have to do a thing to you. You've done it yourself. They get in there and they make up stories and start infighting and splinter you. It's already started. And maybe they did start it, and you're just still reeling from it. But the thing is, you got to do something about it, y'all. So, enough of that said. Now, let me show you something else. I'm going to jump through this program a little bit here. I'm going to show you something that I learned to do in space that might answer a question for you. If you ever looked at, I've looked at a lot of photos, and believe me, y'all like showing a lot of photos and evidence about UFOs. And so I've studied some of the photos and stuff, and I will do some assumptions here, which we can go through. And what we're going to go through is, how would you make a hull like these spacecraft, these UFOs have? Well, let me show you something how we could do something like that. Let's say that this man right here has just fixed himself an oil and vinegar salad dressing, and he shook it up and set it down. Well, let's say he lives in Florida, down at the Cape, where I do a lot of work and have lived there for a while. And we're served by a power company down there called Florida Power and Light, which we call Florida Flash and Flicker. All right? The reason why at 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon you set your watch, incredible lightning storms come by, and they hit everything. And they'll hit a transformer outside, and you can watch your wall socket go across the room with a fire trail. Fun event, and it's happened to me. So this guy's had to come back and save his house and fix his wall socket. When he gets back to the salad dressing, what's he going to have to do to it again? Shake it up. Why? Right, separated. What separated it? No, gravity. Gravity. The gravity field has separated lighter and heavy elements. All right, now you pour 25 tons of molten metal in a big casting trough at one of the big steel plants I went to one day. They showed me their problem. They're casting an I-beam, and this I-beam is going to hold this 100-ton ceiling off your little head. Well, guess what happens before that metal can cool down? Guess what it does? The gravity field comes in and starts separating out the alloys. When we check the big beam, what do we find? We've got hot spots, cold spots, and fracture flaws throughout the beam. And we only have about a 60% molecular blend. That's the best you're going to get here on Earth. Well, so what? That's a big deal, right? Well, it is a big deal. Remember 12 years ago in Kansas City at the Hyatt Regency Hotel? Every Saturday night they had a tea party dance. A walkway bridge over the dance floor comes down weighing 112 tons and kills most of the people dancing that night. If we had a space factory, none of these people need to be hurt. Huh. How? Like this. On board, anybody recognize that spacecraft? It's called Skylab. It flew in 1974 and 1975. And most things that people tell me about it, oh yeah, that's the thing that fell in the Earth's atmosphere and almost hit some people in the head in Australia. Well, it did a little bit more than that, y'all. It did 5,000 industrial experiments out there that showed us some things we could or could not do. First thing that they did is they melted aluminum and lead, and the heaviest alloys that are extremely uncompatible. They mixed it into a soup. When it cooled and hardened, guess what they found? Not a 60% blend, but a 100% molecular blend of the both ends of the metals of the spectrums of Earth. That got people excited up there. Next thing they did was blended some other alloys, and they get the metal out, and they dump it out there, and they're looking at it, and they went, holy smokes. Now imagine this. I'm floating, you're floating with me. We've got this 2,000-degree glowworm floating there, and I'm going, whoa, don't let that get in your underwear. You're not going to like that. So, how do you handle molten metal in a weightless environment, y'all? There's no gravity. You can't pour it in anything. How are you going to cast it into a shape? What, you're going to inject it? Well, that's not free-form casting. You know, you're still locked it with one shape. So how do you handle molten metal in a weightless environment? It's like hammering Jell-O to the wall. Okay? Kind of hard. So while everybody's trying to figure out what to do, the astronauts are not happy up there. They call down, what do you mean you don't know how to handle this stuff? If that thing floats over to the wall and burns a hole in the wall the size of a dime, it'll depressurize the wall, look like linguine going out through there, and we're going to be really upset. So we told them, calm down, you know. They said, that's easy for you to say. So we said, don't disturb the air currents, let it cool down, everything will be okay. So one of the astronauts going, oh, God, you know. So he gets over there and he pulls out cassette tape, plugs it in, listens to some music, calm down. Well, his kids must have fed him the tape because the music that he had was an album called The Wall by Pink Floyd. Vibrant rock and roll music, okay? And it started shoving the metal all over the place. I was listening to that, and they're a little excited up there, and I'm going, this is going from bad to worse quick. And I went, wait a minute. And then I had a flashback. I was 12 years old when my oldest brother took me to Woodstock. The Woodstock, all right? I'm about from here to that wall from the stage, and Led Zeppelin is playing, and they are playing a song called Whole Lot of Love. I don't know if you ever heard that. God, speakers are the size, twice the size of these walls. And I'm going, jeez, it's loud. So I grab these peanuts from this guy, and I clean them up, and I get the peanuts out, and I stick them in the ear so I don't get hearing damage. About 110 decibels, about the size of a howitzer going off. So I'm standing there going, this is okay, and I'm watching the peanut shells, and they keep dancing around, and whenever they come back to sing bars, it keeps reshaping. So I was explaining this to my colleagues, and they're all looking at me going, he's having some, you're at Woodstock, huh? He's having an acid problem, you know. I said, no, follow along with this. What's music? Music is on CDs. What's the D stand for? Digital. What's digits? Numbers. What is music? Mathematical equation in sequential order. Fact. So I said, guess what, guys? We can do this. For every geometric pattern in geometry, there's a corresponding sound for it. And they go, what? I said, yeah. So we go get a Cray 3 computer the size of this room, 6 billion calculations per second. After a while, we have a song sheet. So by composing a song and putting the metal in a 6-dimensional speaker grid, I started doing 3-dimensional casting of metal, stereo sound waves. Casting. Now, some interesting things happen when you do that. First thing that happens is the molecular structure. Remember what happens to metal here on Earth when it's cooling down? What does it do? Separate. It doesn't happen up there. So what I can do, I can hook the metal into with standing sound waves, and with the standing sound waves, I can hold the molecular structure in place. Why is that important? Because then I can rearrange the internal molecular structure of this metal where what I call Chinese handcuff syndrome. Well, what is that? You ever play with Chinese handcuffs? You know, things you stick your fingers in? What happens? The harder you pull, the tighter it gets. Right. So what happens is, by lining up the molecular structure exactly where I want it, and it stays there, then it hardens, when a shear load hits this metal, it's going to equally distribute out through the structure, and the entire molecular structure goes into a sequential order. Well, what does that mean? It means this. The piece of metal we brought back, which, by the way, there's the cassette tape for the music. That metal right there is no thicker than a piece of cellophane, or no thicker than my thumbnail, your thumbnail. But under stress loads, it has 1,000 times the strength of titanium, the hardest substance known on Earth. It weighs less than styrofoam, the same size, and it's crystal clear. Welcome to Transsteel of the 21st century. Now, it's also seamless. How do you cast a UFO spacecraft. Standing sound waves in free-form casting in a weightless environment. That's impossible to do on this planet and this technology at this time. However, we've just glimpsed at how it could possibly be done. Extremely lightweight, and the surface cohesion tension of it, surface metal, is slicker than glass. We're not science fiction, y'all, science fact. So now is a way to verify what you suspect. So, it's interesting how what I'm trying to do in this real world is starting to look more like metaphysics. And sometimes metaphysics now, people want to know about real science, and I'm getting confused because sometimes I can't tell one from the other anymore. So, but it gets better. That's a sound grid at the top, a sound grid at the bottom. When the metals are injected into a weightless environment, they turn into perfect spheres. So let's go back to practical industrial applications. Has anybody ever wondered a perfect sphere in metal? Well, here comes a guy that wants to talk to me on the company. Anybody ever heard of a company called Timken? They make something. When the bearings are casted in a weightless environment and they come back and touch each other, the surface tension is so smooth that when they touch each other in the stress loads, they have a self-lubricating quality beyond any specs oil or grease will ever achieve. What does that mean? It means that you have an Amtrak doing 90 miles an hour and it doesn't lock its bearings up from heat seizure because the grease has failed, and you do a right turn and go for a neat little side tour down through downtown Des Moines, Iowa, like it did one time. It also means that you could do this. You could build an automobile engine and make the piston sleeves and rods and connecting main bearings up there, come back, assemble it here on Earth, and they'll give you a car engine that will guarantee you go 500,000 miles and never need a drop of oil ever. If it sounds like science fiction, then you go talk to this company because they're underway doing that, and the company is called BMW. So, we're catching up on things. Now, I'm going to show you some medical stuff. Medical research up there is a fun place to be in space. You probably hadn't thought about it that much, but gravity is such a demon here in industrial applications. When you remove it, it's just downright miraculous what you can do. How so? Well, one day I was minding my own business, if you can believe that, and these guys walk in, we go, Mr. Adair, we're from Ortho Pharmaceutical. And I went, yeah, subdivision of Johnson & Johnson. You guys make KY jelly and other useful products. So they said, yeah, we do. And they said, we're also in some research work, and we would like for you to build an electrophoretic processor that can work in a microgravity space. Great idea. So we work out some terms, and they leave, and I walk over to a friend of mine and go, what in the world is an electrophoretic processor, you know? It's a device that in the hospitals, the test area looks like a screen. How many people in here ever ordered an ant farm? Look at that. I know there's some people, they just want to hold their hands up, huh? I ordered an ant farm, but whenever my ants came in, they were all dead and shriveled up, you know. So in Georgia, I put ants in there. I put fire ants in mine, buddy. Nobody messed with my ant farm. So, thing looks like an ant farm type screen, and it has a solution in it made of saline. You dump in the enzymes and hormones in there, you fire an electrical charge through, the electrons go in a straight line, the little enzymes and hormones get the hots for the electrons and chase them like Pac-Man. Some run faster and slower than others, you get a layer effect, and that is how you separate enzymes and hormones here on Earth to manufacture vaccines and serums. Okay, great, that's not so hard to understand. But there's a problem with every hospital on Earth. It's in a gravity field. So the ortho medical doctors said that we got a problem. It looks like an old 60s lava lamp. You can fire 1 billion volts there and it still won't separate because of the gravity field. So we built a machine that interfaced up there, had McDonnell Douglas put it on Discovery, had Charlie Walker go to work up there, the first civilian commercial astronaut. Yay, Charlie. So Charlie had nothing to do with NASA. He's just an employee of McDonnell Douglas. Charlie fires up to the grid, it clears all the way to the bottom on the first pass, and there they found what they were looking for. Hormones, 4 times larger and 700 times purer than anything existed on Earth. They separate them. They bring them back to Emory University of Atlanta, Georgia. So we get there with at Emory, and this is 6 years ago. On Channel 5, they say, those of you in the Emory area whose pancreas doesn't produce beta cells, more commonly known as diabetes. Come on in, we got the project to try. They screen out 4 people, and they're in their 20, 40, 60, and 80-year bracket, and they give them intravenous injection. The space hormone, with its purity, works like a genetic encoder, a roadmap, goes straight to their pancreas, start a catalytic conversion in the pancreas, changes everything but itself, and after about years and years of being class 2 diabetics, these people lay their needles down, and they haven't had an insulin shot in 6 years. So you're sitting there going, well, you hadn't heard anything about it? For 2 reasons. Johnson & Johnson paid $227 million for the research flight. They locked it up under proprietary law. Oh, God, mean people, conspiracy, right? Wrong answer. They did it for reason number 2. Have you ever tried to do a manufacturing process in the backseat of your car? That's what it's like on board a space shuttle. You need a space factory in order to, with a facility bigger than this room, so you can inoculate serum batches big enough to take out entire cities at a time, not just 4 people, until we have the United States space station called Freedom. Boy, I was wondering if anybody, PR, great PR job on NASA. Freedom. If we ever get Space Station Freedom built, we would say, we, in our in-house joke, freedom at last. So anyhow, until we have a facility like that, there's nothing they can do about it. However, the potential cure for diabetes is laying in space. Now, you might ask yourself something. Wait a minute. I just saw Bill Clinton give $2 billion last week to the Diabetic Research Foundation. Clinton doesn't know a thing about this because it's under proprietary law. How come I can tell you about it? I made the processor. So it's just a matter of time. Now, let's do practical applications. How much would a shot like that cost? I always love and ask questions like that. And they said, well, probably about $60,000 for one shot. Yeah, boy, I guess I'll die of diabetes then. Other people in the room said, no, you won't. We'll pay for it. You know, who are you guys, Daddy Warbucks? Well, we're the insurance underwriters. All of them, Blue Cross Blue Shield. Well, you are Daddy Warbucks. So anyway, they said, we'll pay for it 100% of normal premium rate. Oh, why are you so generous? Let me figure this one out. Don't tell me. I know. Here's what you'll do. Let's see. You inoculate all these people. Golly, a person goes 80 years with diabetes in their life. Let's see. They get blindness, kidney failure, joint failure, hypertension. It costs you guys hundreds of tens of billions of dollars over their lifetime. You'll put all that money in your pocket. They, the public, get rid of a dread disease. Johnson & Johnson's sitting on a worldwide monopoly. And let's see. The guy who makes the machine gets 10% of everything. I like this. So, I'm telling you, don't buy into all this doom and gloom. If you do, it'll warp you so bad you won't recognize the truth when it hits you right between the eyes. You know, all the stuff, you heard what I went through when I was a teenager, right? If anybody should be bitter, it should be me, right? Do I look bitter? No. This is the greatest time to be alive right now. God's sake, what's wrong with it? It's great. It's marvelous being here. Somebody said, well, you can keep trying and trying, you know, and said it just keeps killed one after. Okay, yeah, maybe they'll squash another one. But you know what? I'm persistent. I've got the tenacity of a T-Rex and persistence, all right? You just keep hammering at something. Something my grandmother told me. Little strokes spell great oaks, okay? You just keep hammering at it. Sooner or later, something's going to get through. And it will. And you don't get downtrodden about it, because if you do, the minute you get depressed or you think they can control you or what good can I do, I'm only one person, then they got you. They can kill this body, they can torture it, you can throw in disease, whatever the hell you want to do to it, but you can't take my free will. You'll never have me. Don't that just piss you off? So, that's the thing. It's a great time to be alive. and it's going to be a great time as we move to the next century. This is just the beginning of the stuff we can do out there. You know, I know all this stuff. I'm frustrated with NASA, you know, and God knows what they're up to right now because they're doing some crazy things. And it's ridiculous. The space program that we have today is not the one you remembered of the Mercury, Gemini, Apollo days. And it's the same company name, different employees, entirely different types of people. They have a different type of agenda, and guess what? You're not invited. So it's not right. We're going to change this stuff, but the only way I can change it is to tell you about all this stuff. So if I'm doing all this stuff, why am I in a little group of UFO Congress here in Laughlin? Because that's how you start a major fire. You know, you start a little spark here, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and guess what? There's enough pressure by enough people upset out there that it gives me some leverage out there on Capitol Hill. And yeah, the system does work. Now, that one medical project I told you about is one of 1,478 medical pharmaceuticals lined up to be made out there. The one I told you about is a minor one. You ever see the other stuff? We don't have time. You know about human insulin now. Psychoprintin, urokinase. That's not a Soviet soft drink, okay? What is urokinase? It's a very expensive substance. Actually, it's a substance made by your kidneys, but only 5% of your kidneys will produce it. Why? Gravity stops the other 95% of your kidneys producing enough of it. What does it do? It gets inside and it prevents blood clots. It's a natural blood declotter. However, with all the garbage and crap and stuff we're eating, with all the everything that's packed into it, and I'm guilty of that, McDonald's, here I come. So anyway, our blood can't take care of it. The little 5% is not enough, so we've had to make it synthetically. And to make it synthetically, it is so expensive, it makes cocaine look like a bargain per gram, all right? However, in space, we made some of it. We made a 5-gallon bucket of it for about $3. Why? Because the gravity field wasn't there and allowed us to do the entire process at just a fraction of the cost. Imagine the type of stuff we can make in the medical arena. Now, let's jump to another one, electronic crystals. Okay, look at that arm. The arm of that cargo, out the cargo bay, it's got hold of a canister. That canister is coming out of this rack, and this entire rack is a process system we call a quartz crystal growing farm. Quartz crystal, what is it? It's on the face of my watch, QURATZ. What is a quartz crystal? It's the heart and soul of the electronic industry today. It's inside our computers, our calculators, our stereophonic equipment, and we can grow these crystals. I know, well, crystals are like rocks. How do they grow? Well, we can grow them through an electrochemical reaction. When crystals grow here on Earth, they look like this. They're nice and linear. Nice looking crystal starting there. And then every crystal on Earth starts that. You know what that is? The same demon I've been telling you about. Gravity convection flaws come in and messes up the crystals. Well, we grew some crystals out in space. They didn't come back that same size. No, they came back in 1/3 the time, but they came back 10 times the size of a crystal grown on Earth. The top half of this photo, whoops, there's the machine that we did this with. Anybody recognize that name? Rockwell International. It's not science fiction, y'all. Here's the computer that sets up the program for the coordinates that comes in. This is a camera shooting the window so we can see what's going on. And now I'm going to show you a slide of what's happening inside that growth crystal chamber. That is called a float zone crystal growth experiment. The top half of this photo is an X-ray view of a crystal grown on Earth. See all the gravity convection streaks? The bottom half of this photo is an X-ray view of a crystal grown in space. Totally flawless. Well, what's these specks? That's dirt on my film. So, what good would that be? Well, first thing you can do with these things, you can have a lot of fun with them with colleagues. First thing we did was build a 555 computer chip. You know anything about computer chips? That's common as dirt. So we send the chips over to Cray 3 Silicon Valley, the big Cray 3 computers. Those computers are the size of this room. They're cooled 420 degrees below zero, liquid nitrogen cooled. Why? Because they turn 6 billion calculations per second. If you didn't cool them like that, they'd melt down to the floor. All right? Pretty powerful machine. So we send those crystals over. They look at them, you know, you guys crazy. That's common as dirt. Now plug it in the test bed and tell us what you think on the capacity side. So they go to that, but to make sure it's on test bed. Yeah, you hear that? Say it to me. Test bed. Okay. So they put it in a test bed. About 30 minutes later, we get a call back. The guy's going, and you hear fire extinguishers and screaming in the background. Yes, you know, and we got a power reading on this thing just for the test bed. Blew off the floor, hit the ceiling, and ricocheted down on the wall here. It's got a power reading of 15,000 times the capacity of any crystal on Earth. What'd you do, hijack a UFO? I went, close. Made this thing in space. So I said, hey, let me talk to the medical systems of Cray 3. You don't have anything loaded over there, do you? I went, no, man. So we got to talk to the computers. Now, the med systems computers are most and nearly all of the medical knowledge of this planet loaded in this thing. And it can give you a hand when you ask the right questions. But here's the trick. You got to ask the right questions. So I asked a question. To what purpose would this serve if we would apply this technology to a neurosynaptic firing order that's been damaged in a carbon-dated unit? What does that mean? It means, what if somebody had a spinal injury? So the computer thought about it, and we downloaded the information, and it came back with an interesting scenario. It said, you have a 16-year-old girl. She's going to be the best Olympic swimmer and diver we ever have. She's practicing. She does a dive. She misses. She hits her head on the edge of the pool. We get her out. The water, we look at her. She has severed her spinal column. She's a quadriplegic for the rest of her life. End of her dreams, right? Wrong answer. What we'll do is this. First thing we'll do, we'll take her to surgery and open up her spinal column. We'll fix her vertebrates through bone marrow fusion. And then this is where it gets interesting. Do you know that 3 pound of gray matter in your skull called your brain? It's the most logic rhythm computer known on the universe to us. I know you're sitting there going, I know he's wrong now, because that person over there hadn't got a lick of logic in their head, right? Well, I'm afraid you're wrong. They do. Now, what we can do is replicate. What do we want to replicate? Do you know when you have an original thought like this, you jump? You know what just happened? You know why people sometimes jump? That animation is not really exaggerated. It's really a reaction to something. When you have an original thought, a tiny lightning bolt will fly from one side of your head at the speed of light, 186,000 miles a second, to the other side. Pure thought is pure energy, and that's a pure fact. So if you get a whole bunch of original thoughts, you got all these little lightning bolts running across there, and you get all these thoughts at one time, you have a brainstorm. Come on, y'all. All right, you're slow. I always warn audiences. I didn't warn you, but that's okay. It's your problem. Now, whenever you're slow on something like that, I will penalize you with a cow joke. What do you call a cow with all 4 legs cut off? Ground beef. What do you call a cow that's had an abortion? This is not nasty. The cow has been decaffeinated. Good. You win a space crystal for the day. Now, you know who told me those jokes? Chuck Yeager. You ever heard of him? Chuck and I are born in the same state, West Virginia, and when he tells you a joke, watch out. He'll honest to God, elbow you. He's corny as he can be, and I love that man to death. He's such a trip. So anyway, back to the surgery room. What we'll do is this. You got a little brainstorm going on there. All these messages are being fired from your brain down through your conduit wiring, better known as your spinal column. And on this girl, it comes to a dead-end stop as a break. What do? We take the capacity power of this crystal. I'll reduce that Cray 3 computer, the size of this room, down to the size of my little nail, my little finger. You implant it in her, do an interface on the neural synaptic firing orders, and just like a traffic cop directing traffic, it picks up the signal, sends it on through at the speed of light, and it sends it on into all the neurons to fire up the muscles. And with a little bit of therapy, she goes on and wins the Olympics and have a nice life for the rest of her life. And all this information has just been sent to Christopher Reeves, and the Man of Steel is going to walk again one day. So, now, all this stuff may seem weird to you. Well, it should, because we call it weird science. You ever heard the term? If what has happened, what an appropriate place we'd be in. I'm in the weird science category. And it's just we're so far edged out there, we are beyond our own infrastructure. Now, that's really important. What does that mean? That means that we discover these things, but we can't really apply them yet because we don't have the infrastructure to help us. It happens all the time. It happened in World War II. How so? You built and designed the Manhattan Project to split the atom. What did we do with it? We built a warhead. All we did was release energy. It wasn't until 40 years later we decided to build nuclear reactors. Why couldn't we do it in 1945? Because we didn't have computers and a technology built all around that could hold that type of technology. Same thing's happening here. You're getting to see Manhattan Project technology, and it'll be a while before we can get it infused because we don't have the infrastructure yet. Now, that leads me to another subject area. While I was at Roswell, they tagged me up with a guy named Colonel Corso. Heard of him? And Colonel's a trip, man. What, 84 or 82 or 84? 82. And he's really neat. Got his pants pulled up around his chest. Looks like Mr. Rogers, or no, Tim Conway, you know, when you walk. But I like the Colonel. Don't get me wrong. I really like the Colonel. He's all right. And he's really done you a big service because you remember in his book, The Day After Roswell, what does he say? That alien technology has been infused into our system. Look familiar, all? Okay. What's happening is our infrastructure. Okay, what's this got to do with anything? It's got to do everything with everything. 20 years ago, you had no cellular phones, power books, fiber optics, cellulars, pagers, satellite information that the magnitude you're carrying on the internet, World Wide Web. You didn't have any of that. So where'd that all come from? All of a sudden we jump in computers, we go from vacuum tube to transistor to microcircuitry board, step, step, step. Okay, it looks pretty good. But now in technology, there's just these massive jumps. You know, how do we do that kind of stuff? Because we cheated on the test, y'all. If we were doing long division, remember the old teacher, show me your work, you know. You can't show me the work. You can show me the product and we'll use it, but you can't show me the work. Corso's dead on target. When they started dumping that technology in, it created a job field for me. Because by transferring this high tech into more reduced applications, we bring up the infrastructure. When the infrastructure comes up, we can then utilize that really cutting-edge technology. Then what happens, the infrastructure of that system builds the other infrastructure faster, then you infuse even more technology. Look at technology. What has it been doing? Exponential jumping. All right, in the last 20 years, we have accomplished more in technology than the other 5,000 years of our previous existence. Now, you want to explain that one to me? On a 3D logical term? Guess what? You can't. All right? So you're sitting there going, oh, he's just fantasizing, right? Well, let's see about that then. Because we're going to go look at something else right now. We're going to skip to another part of the program. And I'm going to show you. By the way, if you want to know what all this stuff is about, well, we'll come back to a couple things to get time. But there's just too much here. All right. Now, here we go. I'm not used to selling stuff, okay? This is run around doing lectures, speaking, and everything. That's not what I do for a living, y'all, if you get the picture. Okay? I have labs. I've got clients. I have 464 clients. And they're wondering, what are you doing out there talking about physical people? You need to be doing this stuff. I said, well, it's important. They need to know this stuff. So, something I hadn't done before, very rarely, 9 months ago, I made a bunch of videotapes in a special effects studio. I brought videotapes with me. If you want to buy the stuff, you can see me afterwards. I'll be at a table in there. So much for the commercial plug, okay? You won't miss any of the stuff. I got on videotapes, you can buy it, and audio tapes. Okay, great. You can listen to my little voice as you drive around traffic going, that guy just cut me off. Talk to him, Dave. Hey, man, get out of the way. We're going to phaser you, you know. So, anyhow, so much for commercial plug, but stuff's available. Now, I want to back up to Corso. We have jumped in areas of technology so rapidly that it's hard to even keep up with. And I'll show you a stunning example. It's been right in front of you, and you completely missed it. How so? Here's a space shuttle. It's coming in re-entry. So here's the problem. It comes in, and the space shuttle is made out of aluminum. Now, it's got to slow itself up. If it doesn't slow itself up, it's going to have a problem. It's coming in at a moderate speed of 26,000 miles an hour. Okay? And if it doesn't slow itself up, it's going to use up a lot of runway and scare the heck out of the people in the runway. Now, how does it slow itself up? Well, it's going to pull its nose up, and it's going to use its belly, and it's going to hit the air. How many of you, I know a lot of you have, jumped in the swimming pool and do the old pink belly, right? You get up, and your little tummy's pink. In my case, it's a damn tidal wave when it hits. So, why is your belly pink? Because you hit the water could not get out of the way fast enough, you got friction, that's why you have a pink belly when you get up. Space shuttle is going to do the same thing. It's going to come in, it's going to pull its nose up, it's going to hit the Earth's atmosphere, it's going to use the atmosphere to slow itself down. But we got a problem, we're going to pick up friction, and it's going to get a little warm up there, y'all. It's going to get up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The shuttle is made out of aluminum, which starts melting at 1,250 degrees Fahrenheit. So you almost got 2.5 times the temperature to melt this thing. So one day, a guy named George Page walked into a room, a bunch of thermodynamic experts, just like you all, and he said, you just seen the program. Believe me, they don't know any more than you do. So they think they do. So anyway, George says, you just saw the program with Space Shuttle. See all the nifty stuff we can do out there, but it got a problem. Every time it comes back in the Earth's atmosphere, it disintegrates. And I can't get any astronauts back here wanting to fly this thing. So I want you to build me a TPS system, a thermal protection system that can withstand 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's got to withstand, let's see, 8.5 million pound thrusting engines, or excuse me, 6.9 million pound thrusting engines for 8.5 minutes, like it is at launch. It's got to withstand 250 degrees below zero, like it is in the shadows of space, and 250 degrees above, like it is in sunlight. So 500 degrees difference in space from light to dark. It's got to withstand total vacuum, X-rays, gamma rays, ultraviolet rays. All right, it's got to withstand, let's see, temperature reentry. But I don't want it to burn up on the first reentry like all the other older bladed shields did. I want it to last 100 round trips before we need to replace it. Got that? Good. Before y'all head to the labs, one other thing. You know we're putting stuff in the cargo bay, right? We've got a weight problem. Can't weigh any more than a piece of styrofoam same size. Can I have that tomorrow? Get them, George. So anyway, 12 years later, and one hell of a lot of failures, they ended up with this, a thermal tile from the Space Shuttle Columbia, and here it is. Been in space about 5 times, got about 2 million space miles on it, hardly even wore it out, okay? Now, it can do all the stuff that I can say it does, and it still weighs no more than that piece of material. See how heavy that is. Really heavy, isn't it? Pretty light. Y'all agree? Pretty light, huh? Good, I'll pay you after show. Now, it weighs only as much as a piece of styrofoam. Now, it can do all the stuff I said it can do and a lot more, and I'll do a really searing demonstration. All right. That's really pretty neat. That's pretty impressive. No, that's pretty lame. So I need to do a better impression with that. And with that, I want to need somebody, a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer and come up here and help me with something? You'll do just fine. All righty. What's your name? Maya. Maya. Okay. Good, Maya. Hold that a minute. Well, this flat little lighter gets up to about 461 degrees Fahrenheit. That's not much of a deal. So I happen to bring this MAP gas torch I made. Now, this is not propane. I filled it with something called MAP gas. We will get up to about 2,600 degrees. Okay? No, actually. Smart girl. Stay perfectly calm. I've done this hundreds of times. I've only lost 3 people. Now. Okay. Now you know what happened to all my hair. So, we're going to walk over here in the dark a little bit. And if you would, Myra, come right over here. And we're going to do this. You hold the fire. Your first impression was right. You must be psychic. Now, I'm holding this thermal towel in my bare-skinned hand. Previous to this, all we've had was asbestos. Now, I want to show you something. This thing is going to get hot. Don't use any flash or you'll not get the fire out of it. It's going to get up to 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit. And if I lean it that way, can you feel the heat? Hot, isn't it? All right, hold it right against it there, admire it. Now, that's only 1.25 inches thick. Look at my bare skin on the back side and I feel no heat. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Think about that. But this stuff can do something no other substance on Earth could ever even achieve the hope of getting to. What's it do? It can isolate the BTUs in their orbits and leave the electron in an excited state. Well, what the heck does that mean? That means this. As Bullwinkle would say, nothing up my sleeve. I will take my other bearskin hand, you hold the fire, I'll pull the tile away, and even glowing at 2,600 degrees Fahrenheit, I'll lay my skin flat on that cherry glowing surface and it won't burn my skin. Let's see what happens. Thank you. Okay, just a minute. Let me adjust my artificial hand here. Back to dead cold room temperature. Now, you want to explain to me how we jumped from asbestos to this? Because we had a little help. Because I tell you, there's technology that's influxing into the technological levels, and there is, try to find trace, originator, resource on this. You can't. You will find that your paper trail will, I'll save you the trouble. It will take you to Sunnyvale, California, Lockheed Missile Space Company, who applies this to the space shuttle, and once you enter past that point, it's unknown. What's it made of? This is cool. I can even tell you the composition. 99.9 or 99.7% of it is made out of silica, the shiny stuff you find in sand at the beach. The other 3/10 of material and how they make it is a Colonel Sanders secret recipe. So, think about that now. Corso is not off the mark. And if you think that infusion of technology is something, you should see some more stuff coming down the line in the very near future to a home near you. Do what? Good question. What's it cost? Raw material, 3 cents. NASA's cost $45,000 for this. Wait a minute, I'm going to defend them on this because there are 30,200 tiles on every orbiter. No two are alike. There's this computer coding here. The paperwork on this one tile would fill half this room. That's why it costs so much. But in raw material, it's just pennies. What's the R factor? We don't know. It goes clear off the scale. Well, 1/4 inch of that is equal to 2 feet of fire brick, and unlike asbestos, I can lick on this all day. Biodegradable. Huh? Because if you, all right, you're the commander of the shuttle, right? You're coming in atmospheric reentry. You have some kind of mishap, maybe you strike a micrometeor on the way in, and you blow a section the size of this wall off, it's going to warm your feet real quick. But if you have all little different sections, you only lose a couple and you'll still make it in. Safety factor. Okay. Now, at this point, wait a minute, I better back up to one more thing you got to see. And then I'm going to open up, let's see. Oh, God, we're out of time. How much time do I have? God almighty, I know what a contestant feels like on Let's Make a Deal, Bob Barker. What? What? Okay, all right, let me go I'm going to go one more project here, and then I'm going to open up the questions. This one NASA doesn't like, because I love it. It's so much fun. They don't want to know about it because it's embarrassing. I love embarrassing stories. So anyway, recognize that spacecraft? What was it called? Skylab. Now, something happened on Skylab that was very interesting. It happened the very first day. The crews that were on board, Gemini, Mercury, and Apollo, they were all military pilots. All right, very disciplined individuals. I mean, they're just like machines, and they make great individuals, and that was a good group of people to be using that for that kind of work. However, we got more advanced. We built a space station where we could do research. Don't need the pilots anymore, so they sent up a crew, and all this crew was all medical doctors, an entirely different animal. So they get these doctors up there, and they're not there more than 10 minutes. One of them pushes, has anybody ever been in Smithsonian and seen Skylab, how big it is? Huge, yeah, it's big as this room. So one doctor gets on one end, he pushes off, he goes flying through the room. All the other guys are floating around. Hey, cool, Frank, you know. But Frank's heading to the wall down there. Great doctor, lousy physicist. He forgot something called momentum and kinetic energy. So what happens is he splats on the wall down there. He gets hooked on something, and he's filleted his arm to the bone. Now, we've never even had anybody had a scratch. Now you got a major problem. So what's the whole crew? Doctors. No problem. They don't panic. They go over there, sew him up. They call back. Hey, I know we only been up here for 30 minutes, and I know it costs $2 billion to get us up here. Frank's okay. We'd like to go on with the mission. Capcom standing there going, oh, God, go on with the mission, you know. So anyway, 3 days go by, 96 hours. Doctors call back. They sound real strange. They're going, Houston, we got a little situation. And the whole room goes, E.F. Hutton, man. What now? So Capcom stands up. He's the color of snow. And he goes, oh, God, now they've killed somebody up there. So Capcom, we need a secured line and call in all the medical people. Oh, God. So I'm watching this. So they go, we went to clean the wound up here on old Frank, and I know it's only been 3 days, but when we pulled the bandages off, he doesn't even have a cut, he don't even have a scar, as if he never was injured. Why? And everybody's standing there going, oh, it looked like a Chinese fire drill. So everybody goes in panic, and then they find out something. You know what that something is? Every one of you has the same healing power as he does. You know what happened? When the human body is unchanged from the field of gravity, 46 things change in your body. Anybody know that number? You should. It's your 8th grade biology. Right. It's the number of your chromosomes. The chromosomes make us up as individuals, so we all don't look like Pee Wee Herman, thank God. So, now, what happened was the chromosomes, when they're unchained from the field of gravity, a chain reaction occurs, and what happens we just don't understand. First thing that happens is it grabs the white corpuscles, the antibacterial defense system in your bloodstream, turns them into super white corpuscles. Okay? A new way to look at age research. Next thing that happens is the genes start. Not Levi's, y'all. Genetic gene material fires up, and the machinery of the body starts cranking out at an exponential level. Bottom line, you heal much faster in space than you heal here. What good would that be? Well, imagine somebody badly burned in an airplane crash, house fire, or making a Pepsi commercial. Michael Jackson. Hey, Michael's all right. See, Michael didn't like drugs of any kind. That boy don't need any. He's always ozone. Anyway, what happens is, the reason since he doesn't like drugs, we started thinking about a whole situation here. So, I went back to the medvac computer and asked a question. The reason I asked a question was because I did volunteer work when I had more time, and I worked with the burn center unit. And man, I tell you, one day they brought in a little girl. She was burned, I couldn't tell it was a girl. She's burned 95% of her body 3rd degree, same as, help me out here, the Malcolm X's wife. Yeah. It's a good thing that she died because she would always been in constant pain. She was outside our envelope of technology to help, and that's a fact. Plus, she would have made Frankenstein look like a beauty queen. So it's a really grim thing. And after my experience, and I dealt with this little girl, trying to work with her, she died. So that bothered me after a while, and I started thinking about this incident, and I went back to the med computers, okay? And I asked a question. What good with the healing technology we just learned with the chromosomes and the genetic materials could be applied to a massive burn victim. Here's what would happen. You take a massive burn victim, sedate them, put them in a liquid cocoon-type transfer container, and you take them up on a med shuttle, and they wake up in a space hospital. First thing they would notice is no pain without any drugs. Why? Because the gravity field's not there pulling you to a surface level on a bed. The gravity's not there to pull the blood to the epidermis level, causing nerve endings to throb. You ever burned your finger with a match and feel your heartbeat there? Won't happen. Next, the cardiovascular system does not have to fight gravity to pump blood through damaged tissues from one end of the body to the other. Shock syndrome stops. Next, the number one killer of a massive burn victim is what? Airborne infection. You're in a total vacuum up there. It makes the cleanest room in the hospital here look like a pig pen. Next thing, you have to feed nutrients into this person like a camel on a refill because their body's going to need a lot of food. I forgot to tell you that astronaut was starving all the time. Couldn't figure out why. He was eating up so much stuff. He said, God, we're going to have to cut the mission short because Frank's about to eat everything up here. Now we know why. Frank was feeding the fuel into a healing engine. And finally, because of that, he or she would heal so fast up there, they would heal without scar tissue, not enough time to form. Welcome to my world. Okay. Pardon? Well, at the rate NASA and Congress move along, probably a couple million years after the second coming. Somebody asked me how old I was the other day, and I said, I'm 2 days older than dirt. Anyway, I'm going to stop at this point. And I'll answer some questions now. Yes. Whoop. Microphone. Oh, yeah. Those of you who want to ask me a question, just come up and line in front of the microphone here so we can all hear the question. So come on up and ask me anything about anything you want to know about. And if I don't know about it, I'll tell you I don't know.
3.
Okay. He asked if I could talk about helium-3. Has anybody ever heard of helium-3? Helium-3 is a substance that was found in the Apollo 17 moon rocks in the University of Wisconsin in 1986. The rocks contained an element of helium that has an extra orbit inside it that is manufactured by the surface of the sun. It's deposited on the surface of the moon courtesy of the solar winds, and it's rather interesting. We knew that it existed, but it never really got here to Earth in any really major form because the ozone layer and the Van Allen radiation belt and all the atmosphere layers we had stopped it from getting here. Well, so why is it so important? Well, the first thing that they did was they heated the moon rocks up. Out came the gas of helium-3. They cooled the helium-3 down into a liquid. Then they took the liquid and saturated a pile rod. That has nothing to do with hemorrhoids, okay? So anyway, this pile rod is placed inside a nuclear reactor. And this reactor that they were using over in Europe is the Soviet breeder reactor. When they fired the reactor up, it jumped to about 97% efficiency, which if you know anything about reactors, that's just amazing because about 65% is the best we can get. But when they shut it down, they went in to check the radiation containment areas, had the same amount of radiation as you get in a barium enema. Clean thermal fusion power. There's enough of it laying on the surface of the moon to feed the entire Earth's needs for the next 10,000 years. Welcome to helium-3. There's a whole I have an hour program on helium-3. Okay, next question.
Yeah, hi, I have 144 questions for you. Oh, yeah. That's good. Just a quick question on the shuttle, on the panels.
Right.
How are they held onto the shuttle, and what about the, how are they put together, glued together?
You said it. The shuttle tiles are glued to the shuttle. Actually, the way they glue it, the first thing they glue is felt onto the aluminum, then they glue the tile onto the felt. I know that sounds kind of strange, Oh, in God's name, are you using glue? Well, we can't use fasteners because the weight factor of 30,200 tiles times bolts and nuts would weigh more than a shuttle would. So they glue it. So what kind of glue are you using? Well, I'll give you this. The hotter it gets, the tighter the glue gets, which is the opposite of normal glue. The byproduct, the technology spin off of that, was this. A researcher walked by, scooped up the waste. That's really good glue. It's really good. It's so good, I could go to the hospital. That cut his fingers apart. The waste product is super glue on a commercial sector. So you imagine what our glue's like.
And really quick, on the anti-gravity or the zero gravity, can't we create something here, like a zero gravity chamber, instead of going into space to do these things?
Yeah, well, y'all heard Pierre Sinclair, right? Not yet? Oh, he's after me? Oh, that's right. You hadn't heard about him. What a little yahoo he is. Where is he? There he is. I've known Pierre for, what, about 10 months now? Anyway, listen to what he's got to say, because I'm procuring funding for both of us. We're going to finish his project. That man's got an anti-gravity platform that will work. Yes.
A couple questions for you. Did you ever get an inkling from where the symbiotic engine technology came?
Yes. That's far as I'm going to go with that answer. And I'm not being cruel to you, but I just, you got to appreciate my position. I haven't retired, and I haven't stepped out of the loop. I'm up to my eyeballs in mainstream 3D world, and I've got to hold some things down because I got to work with them, y'all, you know. And they got yay much tolerance at times.
Well, he's not a politician, at least, is he? Second question. You've been around a long time, relatively long time in the space program. Did we really go to the moon? Are we really on Mars?
That's two questions.
Okay. A and B.
Are you sure you're not a politician? I didn't mean to insult you. Politicians about as useful as wet toilet paper. But yes, we really did go to the moon, and it's ridiculous to think that we didn't, because explain to me how come we could look lifetime through Mount Palomar and see the space vehicle on the surface. Also, explain the 1,278 pound of moon rocks, which we got helium-3 from, which is not indigenous from this area. So, yeah, we went there. Part B, no. You're being duped. And it's so disappointing to me that, matter of fact, a guy named over in Denver, his name is Chip Tatum. You ever heard of him? Gene Tatum, the 25-year deep cover CIA agent? Well, you'll hear a lot about him. He's the one that caused Ollie North to get busted. They just let him out of prison last April. All right, he's a heavy-duty guy. He brought me some newspapers, and I'm going, God, Gene, you just had to do this. First newspaper is Orlando Sentinel, and they got a live feed from the Cape because they wanted to scoop out JPL, okay? There's this really neat-looking shot. There's the little rover right there, and there's the big panorama view. And sitting on the right corner on the surface, about 80 feet away, is this huge solar power panel. What? The solar power panel does not look like anything of the solar power panel on the little lunar rover. They're big old fat photovoltaic cells. They would evaporate in the atmosphere of Mars. It's a hostile system up there. No, what happened was when they got that shot, the next photo came through on all the other wires, the thing's gone. You know why? Somebody had said, hey, Bob, go out there and move that solar power panel out of the way. It's at Death Valley or someplace. And they're pulling a Capricorn 1 on you. And that, I never thought in my lifetime I'd stand up here and say something like that, because I'll definitely tell you we went to the moon, but they are definitely doing a number on you on Mars. You know why? Two reasons. First reason, funding is one, well, you hit it right on the funding part. The first probe that was built, that went in, that exploded when it entered orbit, do you know how much it cost? $1 billion. Do you know how much this probe cost? 20. They put a cap, NASA put a cap at 20 million. Why did they put a cap? Because the contractor that built that probe, 24 hours later after it blew up in orbit, got another rollover for $1 billion. That's when I went nuts. I called the senators up and said, hey, would you buy a car from me this morning and it blew up and you buy another one tomorrow morning? No, you just did. That contractor changed out that oxygen tank on that craft 2 days or twice on the pad on the day of the launch to make sure you don't have a problem. No, to make sure you do have a problem. Because when they got an LOS, loss of signal, you can say Martians blew it up, Richard Hogan can do all his crap and whatever God's name he comes up with. But the fact is, it's just simple, common greed in corporate America and aerospace. And they did a contract rollover, all right? Now, so NASA comes back. I told the senators, I think 60 Minutes needs to know about this. Well, guess what? 3 weeks later, NASA comes out and caps the building of the same probe for $20 million. And they build it. And I'm going, wait a minute. You're telling me you had a $980 million tooling charge? That's ridiculous. So, I don't think they had enough funding for that probe. But they did it for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason is, one, did it land July 4th? What was going on exactly the same moment? Roswell. I was there at Roswell, and they were having a live briefing from the University of San Diego and Stanford University, and some residents of Roswell was able to get hold of some material and hung on to it for 50 years. These universities were given to them. They did these $100,000 hour isotopic tests, and I have the readout sheets with me, and guess what, folks? It's not indigenous to this area. There's a lot more testing needs to be done, but the whole point of this all is, while they were briefing this, the only cameras that were in the Pearson Auditorium was the foreign press. I went outside, down the steps, out in the street with the freaks and the geeks and the airy fairies, people dressed in aluminum foil and antennas going everywhere. There's CBS, NBC, ABC, CNN. I'm going, hey, what are you guys doing down there? God almighty, here's the briefing up here, you know. They're just not looking. I go down right in the crowd. I'm shy, you know. So I grab a cameraman. What are you doing? He goes, we have our assignments. Yes.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you.
The Quest magazine reported about 2 months ago that the British are working on a railgun that they want to put into a mountain. That's a 5,000-foot railgun to launch vehicles into space.
New to me. I hadn't heard anything about that. There is a limit to what I do know. Yes.
I was on Cape Canaveral during the Mercury Apollo time period, and yeah, we did really go to the moon, okay?
Real space program.
My question is, you made a comment that NASA is not the NASA of that time period.
Right.
And they were not much then, okay? The management of NASA was horrible.
It was pretty rough.
Absolutely, they didn't know how to manage anything. But I was curious as to what you had in mind relative to that.
Well, you know, the management was difficult for them, but you got to appreciate what was going on. Look at it historically, y'all. Come on, I'll put it in perspective for you. We went from May 5th, 1961, getting Alan Shepard shot up in there, and July 20th, 1969, we're standing on the surface of the moon. In 8 years, we went from a spacecraft that was the size of a bathroom to a space vehicle that hurled 3 people and 450 tons of equipment, a 500,000-mile round trip. We did that in 8 years. Jesus, name of God, there's nothing can compare to that kind of technological pushing.
A lot of that was due to very dedicated individual effort, not...
All of it was,
yes, it was
because of the individuals that worked. That's the point I'm making. The people that worked there would have paid you to let them work there. They were so into it. It was their heart and soul. The people you got there now don't give a damn about nothing but getting a paycheck. I'm not going to say that for all of them, but the bulk of them is compared to the workforce you remember to the workforce we have now. It's two different entities. It went from a can-do anything agency to a faceless bureaucratic machine now. And this crap's got to stop. We led the world to another planet.
That's too bad. That's really
and we never went back. What's wrong with this picture? Yes.
This may be a bit of a mute question if you've got access to an anti-gravity platform. But have you ever thought about or given any thought to how we could privatize the space program so we get something done instead of waiting for NASA?
Yeah, watch the wording that NASA's playing with. They say they're privatizing the space program. And wrong answer. You want commercializing of the space program. Privatize means this. Do you know where the control center of the Hubble telescope is right now? Johnson Spacecraft Center, JPL? No. Johns Hopkins Medical Center. What? Absolutely right. Check it out. The control center of the Hubble telescope is in the middle of Johns Hopkins Medical Center. Why? A private contractor has it. And you know what the private contractor has in his clause? He does not have to show you a thing until 6 months later. You paid $1.5 billion for that, and you can't even see until 6 months later? I think you should have a riot about that. That's ridiculous. Yes.
How come we never went back to the moon?
I know there's a lot of people in here in the metaphysical community, oh, God, we got moon bases and all that stuff. Maybe you do. I haven't been there. I haven't seen it. I can't tell you it exists. I'm only going to tell you what I've seen, what I've touched, what I felt. That's period, okay? As far as I know, we never went back to the moon. And why we didn't go back, that is the best question I ever heard, because that's the one I've been asking for years. Why in God's name don't we go back? Now, there could be thousands of theories, but I will have to admit to one thing. A normal, logical answer does not fit the question. There's no sense why we didn't go back. We should have never left. We should have stayed. I don't know why we didn't go back. Yes.
Hi. You seem to be an individual with a healthy level of skepticism. I was just wondering, given the fact that you're somewhat on the in on this, what's going on, why would you want to go in front of a bunch of politicians and testify before Congress and in a closed session at a hotel where, first of all, nobody's ever going to hear what you have to say. It's never going to hit the light of day. And frankly, I don't know what it could possibly do. What were your thoughts when you were subjecting yourself to this?
You ever heard the phrase, curiosity killed the cat? I was curious if they really I was thinking it just might be a two-way disclosure. In other words, we tell what we know, they tell us what they know. And if that was going to happen, man, I didn't want to miss that party. So that's why I went. But it was a one-way communication street. They know what they know, and they didn't say a thing about what they knew. That was my question to them. Why aren't you telling us what you know? You got all of us up here talking. You guys aren't saying squat, and you know the rest of the story, you're not telling us. So I just thought maybe I would have got in on, they may have done a disclosure, and I didn't want to miss that.
And the second question is, since you have done your testifying and you're going to be going for some more, do you know whether or not this activity by any chance is going to be bringing any kind of quote-unquote clamps down on you?
No, and that's an interesting thing. Well, maybe they will. I don't know. I'm audited all the time, so that's no big deal with the IRS. I'm used to that. When I saw all what I saw, I was 17. Under 18, I was a minor. They can't sign me to anything. So that was a little mistake on their part. Plus, I have a lot of lawyers. That's the other thing. And I know how to play the game. So far, I haven't felt anything. Plus, they still want me. They want me. So that, if anything, they're probably my guardian angels. They don't want to make sure I don't get hurt. Because they need me for other things, I think. But I've learned something from y'all. I love the concept. He asked, why did you think, what were you thinking? That's what triggered this. It is said in your metaphysical community that we asked to come to this planet and take this life, right? If that's so, what in God's name was I thinking? Why did I end up here? For God, I must have been drunk. They said, hey, Dave, you want to go to Earth, all in humans? Sure, Jeez, what a choice. But, after I got into this is really answering your question. The reason I went was because of you. I went there because I thought I'd try to make a difference for you. So, all of this stuff you see, you go, sure, I can make a lot of money. I don't care about money. The thing I care about is trying to build a better world for you and your kids. I worry about your kids, for God's sake. So that's why I do all that I do. I was born for one reason. You know, I'm working quantum physics when I'm age 7. I was born on a dirt floor in Welch, West Virginia to coal miner families and such. And so I've come a long ways. And people go, oh, you're so great, you're so wonderful and all that. No, that's not it. These are gifts. They're divine gifts and talents. I was just happened to have been saddled with them. And like a mule, I'm here to serve. That's why I came. I guess that's what I must have asked for, because the whole thing I want to do is just leave this place in a better shape than when I found it. So.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, my question is concerning the moon, the monuments on the moon, the monuments on Mars. Okay, we landed on the moon and we didn't go back since the 60s. Well, with the technology, with Colonel Corso, with the technology you're releasing, all these other things, why would they still want to play a game concerning a probe going to Mars? Because in a matter of time, we already landed on the moon, we already have this, and they release certain things in a gradual pace to the general populace, and now it's starting to come out just as of a couple months ago, and it seems to be escalating. So to me, there's already the photos of all these things from a distance. So why would they keep everyone in the dark when you can already see these photos in the distance? It seems like that eventually they'd want to like prepare people little by little by little. So I'm kind of confused on why they would want to stage something with the probe. You talked about with money, but I wonder what's going to happen with the future of the releasing of more of these photos with these monuments on the moon and Mars and things like that.
All right. From this second on, I'm going to speculate. I mean, speculate is sheer conjecture, and you can't hold me for any of this. So it's just, you ask me, now I'm going to tell you, but I'm not quoting anything. It's not a fact. Free country, I can have my opinion. I've never seen, the years I was in the Navy and worked with the jet engines, I also worked with the ONI people, Office of Naval Intelligence. And you'll see the company people coming and going. And I've never seen such a class textbook case of conditioning as they are doing a number on you people, and me included, in the general public. Just on a plane here, I pulled out the United Airlines magazine. There's an ad in there. I got it up in my room. It shows a car going down the road, this big UFO over it, and beaming the heck out of it, and it's an ad for a sound system, car sound system. Ad after ad, 28 movies out. You can't turn around without tripping over an little alien somewhere, you know? So I'm going, damn, I guess they want you to get used to this for some reason. So, like I said to Thurman one day, Senator Thurman, I said, hey, is somebody coming to dinner? It's not Sidney Poitier, right? And I said, are you guys looking for a welcome wagon hostess? You know, and I think, my opinion, of all the little weird factors and stuff, it just adds up to one thing. I think in a very short time, if they did cut a deal, contracts up, gigs up, y'all, and what's happening is worldwide contact is just a short step away. And I think that's coming. And they're panicking. They're trying to figure out, they were supposed to tell us. Whoops, forgot to tell you.
And then the last final question for me would be what I've experienced in my walk in these areas of knowledge and with the Creator who hung the stars in the sky as with yours is you had that will within inside, and within you walked and kept walking forward, and you stand here. And my question is for it is, I think the will inside of what you talked about of putting the laser beam through the wall, I think that's the key of everybody coming together to keep moving forward, and everything will work out in that way as long as we keep that inside and keep moving.
Couldn't agree more. God gave you two things, man. He gave you, or she gave you, that androgynous creature out there that created everything gave you two things, free will and moral sense. It separates us from all the other animals. Moral sense, We know the difference between right and wrong. You have the free will to choose. People who are murderers and everything, inside they know it's wrong. You have that moral sense. And that is it also set off a terrible tug of war within you, because that free will means you got to wrestle against both sides of good and evil. And that's what the whole thing was about being here. It's not whether you get this nice car, this job, or this money. It's how you come out on the battle of free will of what's right and what's wrong. And that's what it was all about.
Thank you.
Right.
You mentioned about the spinal cord repair and everything, but what about going the opposite direction? And if, like for instance, you share with everybody this knowledge you have. Now, what about going into the brainstem, to the brain, and being able to duplicate, like for instance, you say it's way far advanced compared to computers.
Right.
But I don't even know if you'd want to.
Boy, what a sobering thought. More of me? My
Yeah.
God.
And if you even want to answer it, because
That's
only
worth
you
the
would probably
plane
know
sheet.
it.
Huh? Yeah. That's a question that is, I don't think I can answer that. Where it would really be of meaningful answer. It's outside my little pea brain capacity.
Yeah.
Because I hear people out there. Hey, I believe me, y'all. I'm common as dirt. Okay, it's not. Don't get caught up in that thing. Oh, I'm so smart and all that stuff. Once again, these are the divine gifts. You're caught up in the gifts, is what it is.
Okay, and like, with all the cures and stuff we can do in outer space, stuff, like if we were able to cure things, for instance, cancer for one, there'd be a lot of people without jobs.
Actually, it's just the opposite. And
How?
he's saying if you cure cancer, it could be a lot of people without jobs.
The medical industry and insurance.
Well, maybe they ought to be out of jobs,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, let them learn how to change tires. That'd be good.
Yeah. That's it. Thanks.
You refer to the technical accomplishments, particularly, I assume, by humans, but at least available in human society over the last 50 years in general, the last 20 years in particular. Is this done in partnership with ETs, or did they only furnish a starting point, and humanity apart from the ETs has taken it from there?
This is a speculating answer again, because you're taking me to an area I can't even prove or disprove. And no matter what you believe, just because I can't prove it doesn't mean it's not real. I mean, don't get caught in that thought wave as my colleagues do sometimes. I would have to say, observing, scientific observation, there's a lot of things that don't follow a matrix, a flow. We just do these incredible jumps at times, and it's like something comes in and gives us this boost. And I would say that something is external of us and is much more advanced than we are. So what are you talking about? I'm talking about it's got to be an influx of some kind of intelligent life form that's not indigenous to this planet that has helped us move along in this area. And it's either been a good for bad, I don't know, because quite frankly, when I listened for the last 9 months, I didn't even know what the word metaphysics was until 10 months ago. So, and you people mess with my head, man. You really do. You make me think. When somebody asks me a question, I normally go, is this a 3D answer or a metaphysical answer, Because sometimes they both fit, and that's really confusing. I'm so confused. So I don't know to answer your question. Circumstances sure indicate things are not as what they appear to be. That's the best I can answer.
So technical progress has been in a change in an order of magnitude, not just an analog slope.
Absolutely.
Now, another question. You mentioned contact with the man a few steps ahead of me at the microphone. Does that mean that the U.S. government in particular and the world governments in general anticipate that the ETs will reveal themselves to humanity in general and bypass the government control?
That's exactly what I think is going to happen, because the ETs themselves, if I was the commander of an alien thing, oh, you'd be in, oh, it'd be a party for y'all. So, and I'd show up and I'd be dealing with this government. I'm going, yeah, boys, you guys are in hot water. I'd park everything I had over every major capital, and not Independence Day. The only thing I would ask y'all, you want me to round up your leaders for you and just fry them over here, you know?
And one observation, you mentioned that the NASA is a different organization than it was previously. I was involved in that, not NASA, but in the space program. I worked for Rocketdyne in those days.
Oh,
and
right, yeah.
I was in the controls group, and I saw the company diminish from about 21,000 people down to about 2. So they laid off quite a few people, and I could understand that was because Johnson couldn't finance both the space program and the Vietnam War simultaneously, so he obviously chose the war. But the point I'm making is that those people who were laid off were very inspired and willing to exert themselves, and they were very mistreated in the manner of the layoff, very disheartened. So I don't know if
no
that
golden
happened.
parachutes there, nothing.
I don't know if that happened throughout the program or just the one company.
No, the space program was singled out at that time with a vengeance of severing it down. It was unreal. I saw PhDs that were team leaders at the Cape flipping hamburgers to stay alive. 25 years of knowledge contained in these guys, and he just trashed them out the door. Didn't even gave them no pension, nothing. Just shut everything down. The Apollo moon rockets do not exist anymore, y'all. I'm going to make a point for your Cape. Let me think about this, and I want you to go tell everybody you know this little story if you remember it. Here we are in 1997. The farthest I can go away from Earth is 690 miles in a space shuttle. 30 years ago, I could travel 250,000 miles to the moon and back with 450 tons with 3 people. 30 years ago, today I can only go 690 miles. Did we go forwards or backwards in the space program? The Apollo moon rockets are the only hulls left on display. The machines that built the Apollo rockets were cut up for scrap iron, and all of the blueprints of the Apollo program were thrown in a dumpster at the Cape. I saw it. It doesn't even exist. You trashed everything. You didn't, they did. And I tell you what, you know, it's not your fault, but if I was looking at a species like that, I go, you know, you don't deserve to be out in space. You don't deserve anything. You know, but it's not your fault. But that's horrible, man. That's a sin. Historians will look back at this one day, 100 years from now, and they'll go, what in God's name did they not go back to the moon when they led the world at the time? Yes.
Thank you so much for a wonderful presentation. You are just great. In your opinion, what's going on with Mir?
The biggest duct tape job in history. I want to say something for Mir, though. Mir was designed for a life of 2 years. The damn thing is 18 and a half years old and still working. If you get a live picture on it, I'm not kidding, the entire interior of that thing is duct tape. There's not gravity present, so duct tape holds a lot together up there. So between duct tape and Velcro is holding this thing together. And it's such a sorry state of affairs that for us to have all that we had, and the Soviets put up that pitiful thing, which has done a great job, and we're still trying to leech off of it.
Why are our men on it?
Because we don't have a space station. Because the space station that you paid for R&D, NASA spent $2 billion for research for a design of a space station, and the damn thing could sit right here on the stage, look like an erector set on a bad day, and they walked in and looked at it and go, that's a bunch of crap. Tore it all apart and started all over again. But you paid $2 billion, and they still haven't got a damn decent design going yet. I mean, what's wrong with this picture? Don't even get me started on some of the other stuff like Challenger. God. I also have a tape for sale called Challenger, and I am the national spokesperson for the Ron McNair Foundation. The black astronaut died on Challenger. Now that's like an oxymoron. That's an all-black institution. You're a white man saying it. Well, by God, I am, aren't I? So it's like I told a whole group of the foundation, and there was a lot of black folks there, and my opening statement was, y'all remember Steve Martin? I was born a poor black child. Foundation leader said, you know, you're the only white man I know that can get away with the black folks like that. You know why? Because black people have an extreme depth of perception in a matter of seconds, and they can tell if you're hustling them or not. They'll look right in your eyes, and after they look in my eyes in about 30 seconds, they step back and go, Jiminy, a white man that's sincere, God, about our problems, you know. Why? Because I don't see color. I see people. I love people, all kinds of you. And I'm just here to help you. And by God, I'll do it the best I can. So.
This is kind of off the wall, maybe even off the subject, but I can't resist an opportunity to ask someone who probably knows the answer. I was listening to a guy who described himself as an environmental scientist on the radio not long ago. And he said that, first of all, ozone is manufactured by the sun. Secondly, ozone is so unstable that ozone destroys ozone. And thirdly, it's not possible to identify the source of a carbon molecule. And fourthly, carbon molecules are 10 times as heavy as air. The net being, why is NASA telling us that it's hairspray that's destroying the ozone?
Right.
Or building the ozone level?
I could go into an hour in chemistry. This wasn't an Art Bell show, did you hear?
No,
okay.
No, this was a more or less legitimate show.
There's some errors in those statements. And we could go, it would take me a while. See me at my table. And I said,
okay.
And I'm out of time because Pierre's got to talk. Y'all got to have a bladder break. And whoever's in charge of this thing, come up and take control. All right, one more. This is the last question.
Okay, this has to do with the like the curing of diabetes and things like that. This is Johnson & Johnson, you were saying?
Right.
Okay, in order for them to keep on curing diabetes, that would mean that we need to keep on having diabetes. And the information that is coming out is that diabetes is something that is being perpetuated by, you know, certain government organizations
right.
and such. Johnson & Johnson would go out of business if they didn't have, you know, if they couldn't cure things or couldn't sell products. So.
Well, they still got a lot of baby products, right. And that still will be going on.
Well, it almost sounds like the same kind of cycle, but it's just at a higher level.
Right.
You can understand what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, and that's a philosophical answer, and I just don't have a good one.
Real quick, why do you say nuclear instead of nuclear, just out of curiosity?
Because I approach English as a second language, all right? I'm from Georgia. And if you really want to hear what I sound like, I've worked hard keeping this away from you. This is what I really sound like. My God, what do you mean we sound like that? We can bust the ass over Red Pig anytime. Gee, God mighty, you know? So, I'm doing good. I'm handicapped. Go ahead.
Thank you, David.
God bless you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.